We'll start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm here, Spin, and I'm joined by my co-host Rex. And Rex, well, we didn't get to see Arsenal chasing City on the final day of Championship Sunday, but we did get to see them take out their frustration on the team they played instead. And a thing maybe we'll get to later in the pod is how much Arsenal love playing on the last day of the season. So with that said,
Yeah.
good to see you again.
Oh, thanks for being back, man. It was a really good final day of the season, especially near the bottom of the table, which we thought it would be. But yeah, it was fun to follow. It was a fun Sunday.
I mean, it was weird. It was like, something we'll get to later on is, I mean, this season had so many narrative flips, like week to week, essentially from everything from title race to the top four, even the Europe spots. I can't remember
Mhm.
this much, fluid movement, all the way until the final week of the season, and then we get to the last day, and really the only thing that we had to look forward to was the relegation spot. And well, at least we did get a fantastic goal to at least to get to that final spot. But I don't know. I kind of I was kind of thinking I was actually kind of glad that we only really had to focus on the three teams that were fighting for the bottom because there was just so much.
Yeah,
It was so congested. I remember last year the only thing I remember focusing
yeah.
on was Liverpool and City, and I missed everything else that happened. I just feel like that
hmm
is a little too much sometimes, but I don't know.
It is. Yeah, it really is. They need some kind of well, I mean, they have goal zone for like Europa League and Champions League, which is great. They need something kind of like that, I feel like. Or
Especially for that final
um
day. Yeah.
yeah, for the final day, for the final. And Alex said he was like, "Why don't you just, some of the teams that can't really move up or down, they're kind of locked in place. Have those kind of matchups play at a different time or a different day, even,
Yeah, play them on
and then
Saturday.
yeah, play them on set because they don't really matter to the table, which is why like everything's done at the same time on
Mhm.
the same day on the last day. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it is too much, especially like had my eye on the relegation battle, but we also wanted to watch Arsenal and Man United and Brentford. We couldn't, we had to make cuts. We couldn't watch them all, We tried flipping back and forth a little bit too, especially at the end with the Everton game. But it's hard. It was hard.
I was maybe thankful that I actually wasn't watching the Liverpool game because I might have thrown something at the TV for them to be starting leading 2-0 after I don't know 10 minutes, and then you look and it's 4-2 and you're like, wait, what? To the team that hasn't won a game, I want to say in like 3 months. They did draw you guys, but I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah,
So
true.
yeah, and
Yeah, and
then
Alex was like, that would have been a great game to watch too. Like instead of having split focus, just solely watch that game would have been amazing.
And well, because they didn't have that, Saturday was basically only open to it was an invitation to watch the Bundesliga. So that's actually what I ended up doing. I think we were kind of taxing a little bit with Dortmund and Bayern, so we got to see a little of that come down to the final few minutes. Uh, that one was kind of funny too because I saw someone online basically compare being a Dortmund fan to basically permanently reliving the Gerrard slip every single year, and I was like, "Dang, that's
Yeah,
probably accurate." Because Byron did go on to win again. I didn't realize that they hadn't. The last time Dortmund had won was when Klopp was coaching them, which
yeah,
which was
11. I
bonkers.
think 11 in a row.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
it's just like if it's not going to happen this year, when Bayern only was able to get 71 points, you just wonder when could it happen? They weren't able to play
Yeah.
Jude Bellingham, so that was worth saying as well. And then the other thing that featured on Saturday was the championship final with Luton Town and Coventry City, and went to PKs. And lo and behold, Luton Town will be the team that joins that gets that final spot to be in the Premiership next year. And I didn't realize what their stadium looks like, and it is wild. They're apparently, you said they're going to do like some kind of makeover in the summer to kind of
Mm.
update it a little bit. I don't know how much they can
Yeah,
update it.
right.
So that's gonna be it's
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 a
gonna be kind of cool
it's
to
a weird
see.
situation.
It's gonna be kind of cool to see
Yeah.
League teams kind of go into that kind of it looks like one of those I don't know like super like town kind of clubs, like not even like a city club.
Yeah,
Just like a
people's, like, backyards are right at
like
the
a neighborhood
stadium.
club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently they're going to do, I think, around a 10 million pound, renovation at the stadium just so it can, like, be eligible to host Premier League matches, and then after a year, they're supposed to be moving to a much nicer stadium, actually closer to town. So
Hmm.
kind of a weird situation. They got to spend money on a place that they're going to end up leaving in a year anyway. But I don't think that matters with all that Premier League money coming in now.
Well, not just, like, to make the viewing, I guess, more, enjoyable. Can that stadium even hold, at least as is now, VAR? Sometimes that's kinda been an issue, and
Yeah.
I know in the championship they didn't have to do with that, but Luton Town's gonna be
Right.
interesting because, we got a taste a little bit of Luton Town in the Premiership this season when Nathan Jones joined, Southampton, and it's kinda
Mhm.
funny that Nathan Jones ended up leaving, maybe for a better job, and Luton Town was like, "Oh, we don't really need you. We found someone better,"
Yeah.
and the same thing kinda happened with Brighton and Graham Potter, so that's funny how that kinda worked out.
Yeah.
Um but, we'll get started with what happened on Championship Sunday with the relegation battle. Everton played, Bournemouth, Leeds played, Spurs, and Leicester played West Ham, and, that's kind of how it's shaping up, and what I'm gonna do is kind of like how it happened. So I'm gonna do basically a recap of in-game, what happened between these 3 games, and then we'll kind of talk about the 3 teams, and then kind of go on to, what other stuff that happened on that day. So, does that work?
Mhm.
All right, so I mean, we'll get started with Spurs in the first like 2 minutes. They strike first. Emerson just kind of floats a ball upfield to Pedro Porro, making a run. It was interesting to see Pedro Porro played a little higher up upfield in a more attacking role, and it worked. He maybe had his best game for Spurs. Uh, Patrick Struck really struggles, to get on the ball, and then Porro just lays it off to Son, making a run, joining him, and then Son just passes it to his side to Kane, who was wide open after Christian had left his marker to pressure Son. It's a terrific hit by Kane, but it's way too easy at this level. Just 2 minutes in as well, and Leeds are all over the place. You see why they were in this situation. Everyone's kind of walking around. I
Yeah.
don't really understand how someone like Harry Kane is wide open in the box. Like, what is Leeds started this game playing a back five. I don't understand what Ailing's doing if he's not doing the minimum to mark Harry Kane, and then Forshaw is walking while Son just jogs ahead of him. And so just immediately you're like, okay, what kind of Leeds aren't going to be in this, so we can kind of X them out. And then Leeds did have a chance to maybe get even. Coke had a chance to connect on a header, and it was a decent chance to answer, but the header goes wide. And then in the Leicester game, a chance came to Iheanacho. His effort just kind of went over the bar, but it was a decent 1-2 with Madison in the box. It was interesting to see Iheanacho picked over Vardy, and
Mhm.
Iheanacho played just by himself. That's something we hadn't really seen this season. And, lo and behold, a little later on in the game, Iheanacho does a little 1-2 with Harvey Barnes, and that led to their goal. Iheanacho was misused the entire year, and when we get to Leicester, that's gonna be a theme I spend a lot of time talking about. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I don't blame you either. Yeah, we see a player there. We see a proper player there, and yeah, he's inconsistent at times. But yeah, probably Rogers should have ridden him and seen what they could have got. I mean, he's better than Vardy, I think, and he's a lot younger.
or Daka. They were playing Daka, a lot this year. But yeah, I mean, what's kind of funny is so we're like 20 minutes or so
Yeah,
into
yeah,
all of these
yeah,
games, and
Daka.
I
He's not
haven't
terrible either, but
yeah, and I haven't mentioned Everton and the Bournemouth game because nothing happened in this game in the beginning. So I was kind of regretting my viewing choices. But there was finally a chance by Idrissa Gueye. A little action finally at this point. He's able to run onto a ball that was set up by Onana, and it's saved by Travers. But it gets a strong hand to it. Yeah, he should save this, but at least there was a shot on goal. Um, you get it? You get Rex?
yeah,
Oh,
what?
okay. Well, I saw you like looking away. And then Leicester finally shook things up again, and this was important too because once Leicester went ahead, Everton kind of knew that they had to go and win their game. And this kind of forced the Everton fans to kind of just go into, from a bit of a party mood to just almost like being in a church. And it's a good
Some
goal.
real pressure.
It's a
Yeah,
good goal by Harvey Barnes. It's a nice give and go by Iheanacho. Again, Iheanacho plays a role, and then Barnes does a nice job to finish it in the corner. And there was it. I was watching the Everton game, and just like the sense of dread, you could feel it. And because it meant Everton would have to win, and then Everton started the game just playing Damari Gray up top, and it wasn't working. He couldn't hold on to the ball. He was getting bullied off it. It seemed like he was more interested in trying to draw a PK or draw fouls than be strong on the ball and try to create or try to find a shot. And it just wasn't working. They were not looking good at halftime. And then let's see, there were a couple chances that did fall Bournemouth's way. Senese almost scored off like a training ground free kick, or corner kick. It's another reason for Everton fans to dread is Bournemouth looked comfortable. I thought like a lot of this game was played in Everton's like defensive end, which was not something you would have expected. Like Sean Dyche did go with a very, very defensive kind of lineup, a little bit, but and I guess it worked because they were able to keep him out. And then Solanke had a shot that was blocked by Mina. After a really bad giveaway by Tarkowski. This was maybe the chance where this could have really, really blown up on them. And Tarkowski just has a
Yeah.
horrid first touch. It allows David Brooks to run onto a loose ball. He finds Solanke in the box, and Solanke takes a touch and then tries to go for the goal, but it is blocked by Mina. It's a good block by Mina because this maybe is going past Pickford. And that was maybe the one scare. And then right at halftime, they did get a chance for James Garner. It's a hit from outside the box. This should be saved, and it is by Travers, but it was a good shot by Garner, and that was maybe the best chance that Everton had that first half. And so, at halftime, they had Tim Howard speaking. I think all of the NBC crowd was studio people were at Everton Stadium, and there was
Mhm.
none of them were really confident that this was going to work. And after that first half, I kind of agreed with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you kept saying, Ben, like I don't see where goal's going to come from for this Everton side, and I was kind of feeling the same way, especially with results going, other ways, like with Leicester winning. The pressure was even more on Everton to score a goal, and they managed to do it. And the weird thing, not weird, but I like the fact that I think they were talking to Pickford after the game, and they were like, "Hey." At halftime, did Deitch bring up any of the other scores? Like, did he tell you the Leicester score?
Ooh.
And Pickford said, "No, we didn't talk about that at all. We just focused on our own play, and we thought we were playing well enough to go ahead and grab a goal." And I like that kind of just
Hmm.
not don't mention that. Don't mention that at all. Just focus on your own play. We're playing well. Just keep playing the way we've been playing, and maybe we'll grab a goal. And kind of avoid that extra pressure of saying that, hey, by the way, Leicester's winning, so we kind of have to score.
I mean, the interesting thing also is he went into this game. We mentioned how he didn't play with a striker. He didn't play with fullbacks or wingbacks. He played James Garner as a
Yeah,
wingback, and I think it was Dwight McNeil. And
yeah,
in that first half, they really were defending the entire time, and for not really that not being their position, both of them played really well defending. To be fair to them,
yeah.
and a little bit more in the second half, we did see them able to get forward a little bit more, and that helped out as well. Another thing we saw was there was a implicit direction to be a little bit more direct. And we
Mm,
saw that work out a little bit more, which we'll get to.
yeah.
But the second half started, and the goal, a goal is scored, but it comes in the Spurs game, and this one probably did kill. I mean, the first one probably killed Leeds off, but this one did as well. It's Pedro Porro, and it looks like Davis is cornered, and he's able to find Kane in the middle of the field. I don't get why Kane is wide open in the middle of the field. Liam Cooper tries to close down on Kane, but Kane does a nice flick to get the ball over him and dummies him. And from there, he's able to beat a couple Leeds players, chasing him, and then he threads Pedro Porro making a nice run behind Struck. Patrick Struck did not have a good game in this game. And then
Mm.
Struck is able to put it in the corner. And there you go. I mean, it's 2-0, two Spurs, and in the first 2 minutes of each half, which whatever whatever Allardyce said to kind of pump these guys up, either in halftime or the first game, did not work because they did not start off either half well, and that kind of decided the Spurs and Leeds game. And so we move on to the Everton game, and we finally get Damari Gray. Maybe his best chance. So I mean, we're seeing how much Calvert Lewin was missed in a game like this. So what happens is Demarai Gray is just a few yards away from goal, and he can't do anything other than head the ball low and weak, and it's close enough for the keeper to save it. But what happens here is Zabaneri kind of gets lucky. He has a really poor header that kind of falls to Gray. Everton are able to get bodies forward, and what they do is they just send a ball long over the top, and Bournemouth aren't really able to kind of deal with it, and they almost got a rebound or ricochet to kind of fall to an Everton player, and it was close. And a few minutes later, we saw them get the goal that they were begging for, dreaming for, and it was something similar. So Everton send a long ball into the box. Onana does enough to make the Bournemouth player misplay it, or maybe even Onana wins the header, and the ball can't be cleared, and it finds its way to Decore, who's standing kind of outside the box, and he hits us a sweet. It's something like Kevin De Bruyne would have done versus like Real Madrid. I mean, this he connects it where I mean, the spin on this, it doesn't get more than, I don't know, 5 feet in the air, and it just arrows into the goal. And another thing that was perfect was because of the way a couple Bournemouth players were standing, Travers couldn't have seen this. That's the reason why he doesn't even move. I don't even know if he maybe could have saved it even if he had seen it, because this was an
Yeah.
arrow. And it's a monster goal Doucouré was a monster, that helped Everton beat Brighton, a few weeks ago as well. You know, Calvert-Lewin helped in some of that, but Doucouré had 2 really big goals in that as well. So it was maybe fitting that Doucouré was kind of the hero here, because he showed up
Yeah.
really big towards the end. And it was also fitting, I thought, that, one of the little storylines when Lampard was, managing Everton is he was starting to sit Doucouré a little bit more. He's favoring Onana, favoring a couple others. And so, he hasn't necessarily had the best season this year. He was also hurt. He was hurt, last year as
That's
well. I think
right.
he was flying, I think, under, Carlo Ancelotti's Everton, and then he got, like, a broken leg. So he's had a couple rough 2 years in a row, but you've seen, especially in the last few weeks, what quality he does offer. And they
Yeah.
needed it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh, they needed him for sure. Yeah, I think some of those midfield guys like Idrissa Gana, Decore, and Onana were pivotal in keeping Everton up this year. There's no doubt about that. Because at the very
Oh,
least, you look at that midfield three, and if they're playing, you'd be like, okay, that's a pretty solid midfield base. And then you have Pickford back there too. So yeah, they were crucial too.
yeah, because they covered so much ground. I mean,
Oh yeah,
the way that they beat Brighton was just, any kind of turnover, they were really quickly at transitioning. And it really with some of the places that they were getting, I remember in the Brighton game that Decore was getting the ball, it was like it was deep into their own half. Like they were able to, run 70 yards, which is not easy to necessarily do. And so, watching this live, the fun thing about this was, the crowd, the entire crowd, just started singing song after song in unison, which I hadn't really seen, anything like. And, because sometimes you have, like, the hardcore fans, but, people that pay, pay for, like, the big seats, I guess you could say. Usually, they're just kinda
yeah,
sitting down and not really doing it. It seemed when the crowd was panning just everywhere across the stadium, you saw everyone standing up and singing, and you could hear it, and, it was pretty cool. Um
oh yeah, yeah. It was awesome. Great atmosphere. I'd much rather watch that with the happy atmosphere than go to like Leeds or Leicester, where the
Well
atmosphere was just very bleak and depressing.
well, right, because the absolute opposite happened. It seemed like Leicester's fans were kind of in a, celebrating a little bit, even though it was only 1-0, and then, basically the crowd just went in complete silence. Everyone's, like, looking at their phone. And then
Mhm.
Wout Faes was able to get a second goal, to kind of, uplift the mood a little bit, which basically said that, Everton had to win their game, that it put it in the
Yeah,
hands of, at least, if Bournemouth could get something in, Leicester would have had a chance. And it's a good delivery sent in by Tielemans and Wout Faes, who has also been, the subject of a lot of, Leicester conversations this year, was able to get a big goal for
yeah,
them. And so, and then the game that stopped mattering with Leeds, Jack Harrison was able to get, a goal to make it 2-1. And the only reason why I want to touch on this is this goal comes from really good center forward play by, Jorginho Rutter, who's finally subbed on and finally played, and he chased a loose ball and was able to kind of, shoulder or body someone off it, and then he finds Harrison, picks out Harrison, and it's a good finish. And Ben Davies just doesn't get tight on Harrison which we saw last week versus, Brentford and Bremer. Ben Davies, has not had a best, return since coming back from injury. To say, but the only reason
yeah,
I want to touch on this is I don't understand why Rudder didn't play more. Bamford's been injured, this whole time down the stretch. You paid all this money for him, young. I understand, but what did you have to lose? And,
yeah,
I don't necessarily want to say this is the reason why they went down. Obviously, they couldn't defend to save their lives.
yeah.
But to not play this guy was weird. And maybe the one positive is because he is so young and because no one really got a chance to see what he can offer, and his numbers weren't great in Germany. They're probably going to be able to keep him, and so maybe he'll help
Mhm.
them in the championship.
Yeah, I think he could. He could probably score a ton of goals, but yeah, it was kind of odd not to see him play that much, especially like you said, they paid so much money for him. But yeah, I mean, maybe he could have helped them. But yeah, Ben, I'm with you. Like that defense was just so bad, and you're talking about the game, and you're reading off some of their defenders, and every time I hear you say one of their defenders, I'm just like, he's an average defender at best.
Oh no.
Strike's an average defender at best,
Yeah.
and but we've been saying that all year, and they should have done something about it in the transfer windows. I mean,
Yep.
it wasn't hard to point out. why Leeds were in this position, and it was their defenders for sure.
And we brought up Bremer a couple of times in the podcast. We were like, oh well, they're missing him. He's injured, or he's got a he's carted out or something. He came back into the squad the last few games. He wasn't good either. He had a
Hmm.
couple errors as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, their own goal too. I think.
it is what it is. I think especially last week or in one of the big games down the stretch, he had a terrible PK. It might have been versus Newcastle. Um,
Mm.
yeah. And then
Oh, that's right.
and
Yeah.
then Harry Kane was able to get his second, again, set up by Pedro Porro. He was able to just kind of, get the ball, and then he finds Kane. It's a really good finish, for Kane. And then, so that game was kind of, done and dusted. The Leicester game was done and dusted, and everything kind of turned to the Bournemouth and Everton game. And, Bournemouth got a good chance here. Kiefer Moore, nearly gets onto a cross that was sent in, and Pickford is very brave here. He gets in the way, and I think he hurts his finger in the process.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, Pickford didn't have to do a lot this game, but in the moments that he was called for, he was huge. And you could
Mhm.
maybe say that for him the entire season. Yeah, um, maybe
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I shouldn't have discounted, Everton was because of him. He really did have he has proved himself in the last few seasons. Now, people could say
Yeah.
he proved himself in England's Euros and World Cup runs. I've always kind of looked at him as maybe someone could get to him. To me, I think he's improved overall. So
Yeah, well, they're England is kind of loaded with goalkeepers too. They got a lot of young guys, so sometimes, in the past we were kind of like his pick for the number one guy. But yeah, I mean, he's been huge this year, and he was huge keeping them up last year too. So I think he definitely deserves some plaudits.
mhm.
I do wonder how long he's going to stay at Everton, especially if they're just going to continuously be fighting to stay out of the relegation zone because he's probably a keeper that could be playing in Europa at least or Europa Conference League, maybe even Champions League. That's probably where he wants to play. So I wonder, how long he will stay. But yeah, he's a great keeper, and he's the reason Everton have been in the Premier League the last 2 seasons, probably.
I mean, maybe just the fact that he is a little bit older, and he has gotten World Cup, and he seems to have the England job on lock. Maybe he'll have enough of his fill, just kind of playing in those big games where he won't have to necessarily worry about that.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
interviewed him on NBC, and
Hmm.
they basically asked him straight up, what he thought about should they keep Dyche or whatnot, and he could not speak more highly of him. He's glowed with him. So maybe Dyche will be enough to kind of just be like, hey, you kind of stay here. He
Yeah. Maybe.
obviously is adored there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I don't think he would leave like this summer or anything, but
yeah,
in a couple years, maybe.
yeah, that's
But
a good
yeah, I
shout.
thought too. Yeah, but he also Benny kind of echoed what you said. Pickford, he was like, we can't keep fighting to stay out of the relegation zone. We're
Yeah,
gonna get relegated
and
if we're
Dyche said that too.
continuously
Yeah,
down here. Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point too. And hopefully the board takes that to heart and buy some players. I think they need to just cut ties with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Um,
I think so too.
just I
Yeah.
mean, he's talented when healthy, but it's been like 2 or 3 years where he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he's eaten up some of that wage bill. I would get rid of him and go for someone, younger with a better injury track record for sure.
I mean, they're gonna have
Maybe
to get
Nketiah, Ben. Nketiah could do well there.
well, Iheanacho. Iheanacho just kind of got
Yeah,
relegated.
Nacho could do well.
I would look at that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
rate some of those relegated clubs.
yeah. I think that's a great shout because if they don't get the summer right, it's hard to not feel that they will be back here,
Yeah,
again. And yeah, it's just crazy because when you think about it, it was I guess during the COVID year when Everton were like they were close to getting like eighth with like
yeah,
Ancelotti,
uh-huh.
and well they had like James Rodriguez playing for them, which
That's
looking back
right.
was kind of wild. And, how quickly things just changed. And that's kind of something that Jeremy kind of spoke to me about, and that'll be another thing we get to later, is it is scary how quickly things can change, from just a couple
Yeah,
seasons where you're fighting for 8th, you're fighting to try to get into that Europa spot, you're trying to improve a little bit, and if it doesn't go right, you can find yourselves, not just, being in mid-table, fighting for relegation year in and year out.
yeah. So it's Leicester too. Leicester was knocking on the Champions
100%.
League door for years and and they won the league in what 2016, I think they won the league, and then they're relegated. They won FA Cup last year.
FA yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm.
tons of example. Yeah, it's scary. You can really, I mean, really look at Chelsea too. Not that they're in the relegation zone, but finishing in the bottom half of the table
If it
with
wasn't
all that money.
if you take away the wins that Thomas Tuchel won, I actually saw this. Now you can't necessarily do this, but just kind of a fun experiment. They would have finished 17th,
Wow.
which is amazing. Uh, and Graham Potter won his first 5 games, as a manager. I remember, everyone was like, "Oh, this is going great," and then, he got blown out by Brighton. I think that was his first loss, and then I don't know if they won a game after that until, like, May or whatever. Like, Lampard beat Bournemouth, and that might have been, like, the only game that Chelsea won since, well, they beat Leicester.
Yeah.
They were, like, 2 wins from, like, January. It's stunning. Um
Yeah, some of the teams that finished above them too, like Crystal Palace, Fulham. I mean, we know Brentford's good, but Brentford's still like it's kind of crazy.
And, to kind of finish up a little bit, did a couple chances did come to Bournemouth's way again. Watatara had another good cross that Kiefer Moore tried to get on the end of, and then right at the end, I thought this was kind of fitting as well. We just talked about Pickford. Pickford has a gigantic stop on Vina. Now, um, the NBC people or the commentators were like, Pickford's got to save this anyways. But this is almost a carbon copy goal that Everton scored. A ball is sent in. Kiefer Moore kind of runs the 50-50. And then the ball finds Vina kind of outside the box, and he one times the volley. It's a hard volley. It's kind of the same height, same hit, and just the only difference is Pickford, I guess, is able to see it, and he actually dives. He anticipates where this is going. It's possible that because Pickford literally you see him diving before the ball's even hit, so he's anticipating this. That's why he's able to get such a strong hand on it. If Vina goes maybe the other post, maybe Pickford dives the entire wrong way.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
anyways, it's a big save. I'm not going to discount the save at all, and that's really what they needed. And
Okay.
then in the Spurs game, the only reason to touch on this is Lucas Moura did get a fourth. I want to touch on this a little bit because Lucas Moura, I think it's his final game. He hasn't necessarily had the best go of it this season. I remember, he came on
Yeah.
as a sub versus Everton and actually got a red card, and that ended up kind of factoring in and dropping points in that game. And I think he came on versus Liverpool, and it might have been like his touch that helped Jota out. Uh, but I think I'm always going to remember him for what he did in the Champions League semifinals. Beating that Ajax team almost by himself, and he scores a
Mhm.
similar goal here. Just he showed quick feet. He's always been kind of a clever kind of individual dribbler, and it helped out that Leeds just did not want to play at this time because he basically dribbled through like 4 or 5 players, and it was a nice finish by him. Nice little
Yeah. Good curtain call too.
turn back the clock time.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like I'll remember him for those Champions League performances 100%. And there's some good anticipation that you had someone that could you know give Harry Kane and others a rest. But yeah, just didn't quite work out for him. But we'll see where he goes. And he's still a good player, I think, and he showed some good qualities in this game. And it's a good curtain call.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And so what we'll do now is kind of go over all 3 games, kind of focus in on we've touched a little bit on the teams, but we'll do a little bit more in depth. I mean, for the Everton and Bournemouth game, the XG was 1.4 for Everton. Bournemouth was 0.46. Everton, 13 shots, 6 on target, 9 corner kicks for Everton as well. Bournemouth's only 7 and 2, and Everton only had 38% of the ball and then 223 passes. So that's kind of what you were saying. They did a lot of running without the ball, and I'm not necessarily sure if they're going to be able to repeat that. Next season and on. They've got to find a way to get better in possession. I would say. And then
Right.
Bournemouth with 447 passes, 84%. Bournemouth got better towards the end of the season, actually in possession, in my opinion. And Bournemouth didn't necessarily have to win this game. They actually ended the season, I think, losing their last 4 games. So that could be something to necessarily follow on, but you can understand the players kind of exhausting a little bit after staying up. We'll get to Bournemouth. I have a couple things to say about them. Uh, but for Everton, I kind of mentioned it. It is fitting that Decore is the hero. But one thing I kind of want to get started with you is to me it's a baseball feel to it. And 3 strikes, you're out in baseball, and I think
Mm.
this is fair to this is strike 2, I think, for Everton. It's 2 seasons in a row. They've left it at very, very late, and it's gonna be a very important summer for them. Maybe Ellis Sims can
Yeah.
improve. I think you're right
Mhm.
about it might be time to let go of
Yeah.
Calvert-Lewin, see what you can get, because if he's only
I
healthy
think
for
so.
75% of your games, that just what is the point? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's I think it sucks to say because he is a good player when healthy, but it's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy either. So like, yeah, there's a really good player there when healthy, but he's kind of shown to you the last couple seasons that he can't stay healthy. Yeah, I think it's time to go, and he's going to eat some of that wage bill up too. So if you get rid of him, maybe I mean there would be a danger of bringing in a younger player, but maybe you could bring in a younger, Premier League experienced player.
They already have
Like
Sims.
you said,
Young
yeah,
young
they already have Sims.
young
Yeah,
enough,
we'll
so
see
get
about him,
someone
but
get someone a little bit more experienced. Yeah.
I
Obviously.
agree with you though. We should raid Leicester, Leeds, and Southampton for those strikers maybe, and they're Premier League experienced guys, like you said. So maybe they'll do something like that, and then save some wage money and I don't know, bring in a defender or something like that. But their midfield looks pretty good. Maybe you can add some more depth there. But the three starters in midfield look great at least. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's another big summer, and it was a big summer last year, and they didn't do much really. I mean, you put in the script, they sold some guys, and they didn't really replace them
I'm
either.
trying to
So
yeah, I'm trying to think, like, how much different is this season if they didn't sell with Charleston? Now, I don't know what their
hmm,
financials are, if they had to necessarily I think Richarlison would have actually done really well in this Everton team, the way that they were kinda playing and just, the directness and, he just didn't it never really made sense for him going to a club that had Kane. You were never going to
yeah,
be the lead guy.
mm,
It didn't necessarily work out for him. We saw him what he was capable of
yeah,
in Brazil when he was able to kind of be
yeah.
the lead person up front.
Well, I would think he would at least have had like 7 or 8 goals for Everton and a couple assists at least on like that's like a down like a down year. Who knows that would have been worth a couple of points here or there, and maybe they didn't have to sweat it to the last day because they were only like 2 or 3 points out of really being pretty clear and not having to worry on the last day. So yeah, that's a good point too, Ben. Yeah, but they didn't even try to replace him. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe they're just saving that money for this summer. I don't know, but I don't know too if the new stadium, if their wallet is kind of
I think that's a problem.
tied to
Right.
that too.
Yeah,
That would be a big
it
problem.
could be a
Yeah.
lot of that. Yeah.
hmm Yeah,
And,
kind of like Arsenal or Tottenham when they were building their new stadium, where you just a couple years you can't really buy the players you want to, but you still have to stay in the prem. It's like a tough balancing act.
it really is. I think that's an excellent point to bring up. One thing that's kind of funny. We talked about Pickford a little bit. I want to kind of put this out there. It is very possible that really the reason why they stay up is because they were able to get that draw versus Leicester, and they actually outplayed Leicester. I remember them having something like 25 shots, or versus Leicester's like I don't know 6 or whatever. But both keepers made a lot of saves in that game. But there was a defining moment where Leicester had a chance to go basically 3-1 up. Madison had a PK, and Pickford had a water bottle that basically said, and Sky was able to like do a picture of it. It basically said Madison likes to go center like 70% of the time, and Pickford saved the PK and
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
basically saved the game. And because that game, they both got a point. Leicester didn't wasn't able to get a little ahead of them. Maybe that alone is what kept them up. And it's crazy how
Yeah.
something little like that ends up showing up at the end.
Yeah, yeah, in a 38 game season, just something small like that and like their, second to last, third class game, changes the whole season.
And so this is probably stupid. I don't even know if they're gonna think about this, but I had this in my mind. We've talked about what they should do striker wise a little bit. Do you think maybe they would try to look at Burnley because it doesn't look like he's going to be invited back at Manchester United. What do you think about bringing Wanghorst to Everton and team joining with Sean Dyche again? Um,
Oh man, well, I don't
he
know.
doesn't necessarily
Beckhorst just
he doesn't necessarily score, so
yeah,
that's worth saying. But he's fit, he's available, and he's such a big body.
he's big.
The
Yeah,
way that they like to attack balls in the air. I almost feels like he fits something like Dyche likes to play with. To be honest,
I think. Well, if he could stay healthy, he'd be a solid option. He'd be better than a an half injured Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll do that. We kind of we see that Dyche likes to go with some players he's coached before, with like Tarkovsky and some other guys. So yeah, maybe he would do that.
and I discounted Dyche a few weeks ago, and maybe it's a little egg on my face because He actually made some big calls down the stretch. I think it's worth saying. He brought on James Garner to the squad. James Garner wasn't
Yeah.
really playing a lot, and he factored in a lot of these games. And to play Garner and McNeil as like makeshift wingbacks really did work out. They didn't have Coleman, they didn't have Mikalenko, and they didn't have the other guy that was their right, Patterson.
Oh,
Healthy
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for like down the stretch. Like their back line, at least for fullbacks, was completely cleaned out. And it worked. They were big versus Wolves. McNeil had a couple big moments versus Brighton, and I mean, we can mention Decore down the stretch as well. But Daesh actually did come in and did make some big calls, and it worked for them.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and I think the funny thing that I kind of wanted to put down here is if the Decore shot doesn't go in, I'm probably being a little bit more critical. So it's worth saying that as well because Damari Gray was not working out. I didn't understand why he didn't at least try Ellis Sims a little bit earlier. Or you brought in Neil Maupay. I guess the idea was replacing Richarlison with Neil Maupay. That really didn't work at all.
Yeah,
'Cause
not at all.
not, not 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 the same player, and they didn't. It seemed like they just didn't fancy him. And so yeesh, that was rough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a little rough for sure.
And then for to touch a little bit on Bournemouth, we don't spend a lot of time. Yeah, I've said it, on a number of podcasts that to me, O'Neil was my manager of the season. I think Pep actually ended up winning it.
Yeah,
I don't
Pep
think
won,
O'Neil was
yeah.
even mentioned or nominated. I know a lot of people in media were saying it was Howe, which I think was fair. Arteta to me was a little more deserving
Arteta.
than Pep, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel the same way, but below Homer.
But
Homer isn't there.
let's just go back to how this happened. Uh, the second week of the year, Scott Parker went public and basically called out his players publicly, saying, we need to have investment. My players aren't good enough." And then they lost 9-0 in a game. Everyone had assumed was like, okay, we have 19 teams to worry about now. The 20th is already kind of written their gravestone, and they bring in this they anoint the caretaker, and what does he do in the next game? He gets that group to refocus, and they get a 0-0 draw versus Wolves, and then they go in to beat Southampton. I mean Nottingham Forest in the very next game, and just everything just kind of turned around. And they were always kind of sticking with him, and to keep this team in and with games to spare, I thought was a masterful job. Now I don't
Absolutely. Yeah.
and there's a lot of romance there, and I don't want to necessarily be a Debbie Downer, but they did lose 4 in a row to end the season, and you look at what they have to play with next year. I don't necessarily know what the finances are because they did bring in a lot of guys in January, and a lot of those guys. Well, some of those guys were injured and whatnot, but we'll see what they have. We'll have for them next year if they can
Yeah.
stay up. But at least for this season,
Yeah, we'll see.
we'll only live in this season. That
Yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a good shot. I like these guys that kinda go under the radar that, just because their team finished in, like, 15th or whatever, just keeping them in the Premier League was a great job. So, yeah, good shot, Ben, I like that.
He won. He won like 6 of 10 games, and he beat Spurs in one of them and beat Liverpool. The so, yeah, the way they were able to just kind of, again, just to get that group to play play above their means, in my opinion, hats off. And then we'll move on to Leicester and West Ham, which we spoke about. Let's see. The shots were Leicester did have 13 and 4 on target. West Ham 16 and 3. I think the crazy thing is seeing the lineup that happened. Now, I thought the Conference League final was going to be this Wednesday, and apparently it's next Wednesday, so maybe that's why. But we
Yeah,
saw we
next
saw
Wednesday.
Declan Rice again. We saw Paqueta and Antonio. I was like, wait, what? Um,
Yeah, I was kinda surprised too, honestly.
yeah. So they didn't necessarily get a rest, and they ended up losing, but they ended up playing okay. One player I want to touch on is Flynn Downs, because I
Yeah.
think he's kind of been he's been shoved in the side, kind of pushed into the side, and he's kind of struggled in a lot of these games, in my opinion. He was fantastic in this one. 64 of 66 accurate passes, one key pass, and 5 of 5 for ground duels. It's not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that this is your Declan Rice replacement, but at least coming in to be his partner at least for this game, he was great, and
Yeah.
uh, it might give Moyes something to think about for the Conference League because sometimes Suchek's kind of been hit and miss in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Flint, I think he's pretty good for his age. I mean, maybe he could be the next Declan Rice replacement in a couple years. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, like he could definitely rotate with Suchek for sure. He's still young. He's still young too, so he's
Mhm.
still learning how to play in the Prem. And yeah, he's had some up and down performances for sure. But in some of the performances where he's played well, you kind of see what type of player he could possibly be with a little bit more consistency.
I mean, to see these numbers from West Ham, we'll touch on Leicester because Leicester won the game. But 501 passing from West Ham, 89% accuracy. Those are not numbers that you normally see when I'm documenting West Ham. I don't know if necessarily if Lynn Downs was a big reason for that or not. But I think that's big. It's the one critique I think I've had of West Ham all season is they haven't really been able to control games enough. They've been playing without the ball way too much. And so maybe this can be something that they think about next season. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely.
to touch on with Leicester, where do you think this started? We'll maybe kind of touch here because so they missed out on top four 2 years in a row. Uh, they went out and spent some money and brought in some attacking and some midfielders. But they never really touched on defense. They sold Harry Maguire, and I guess his replacement was Sorenchu. We didn't see Sorenchu this entire season. They sold Chilwell. I think they thought they had James Justin as their replacement, and James Justin tore his ACL 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
And then they sold Fofana this season and brought in Vestergaard last year, and who they didn't like, and brought in Ralph Faes, who took a long time to kind of get settled into the league as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, it just took too long, like too long to bring in a player that wasn't just a stopgap. Like Vestergaard felt like just a stopgap. Um, yeah, they got unlucky too with some injuries, of course. But
yeah,
yeah, like out of the three that got relegated, you look at the talent that Leicester has, and they definitely have enough talent to keep them up. I mean, Madison, Tillemans alone. But for me, Ben, when they lost Schmeichel. That's
that's a
when,
really good call.
and they didn't replace him either. But another player they lost and they didn't really replace. But he was the heart and soul of the team, and he was the
Captain.
captain and the leader in the clubhouse too.
Hmm.
And that I think that was a big deal. Not only, he's so experienced because they won the FA Cup and he won the Premier League with Leicester and just a crazy season. I think they definitely missed him and his clubhouse attitude for sure.
Yeah, because it's possible, like, maybe people weren't listening to Rogers, because he had maybe that had gone stale, and maybe someone like Schmeichel would have kind of, gotten the group, together a little bit. I thought like it was also weird, towards the end, you saw a lot of these guys, run down their contracts.
Yeah,
In Tielemans, I think Madison only has 1 year left. I saw Mendy. It's something like 8 players, that they're about to either lose for free. I think Sorenchu is one of them, and apparently one of the reasons why they weren't playing him is they were trying to keep his sell value to sell him to Atletico Madrid, in case he got hurt. That's crazy to me. That's not a way to really run a football club. I know they've been hurting
yeah,
financially. That's another thing we should get to. Financial fair play to me has become a sham. I don't want to go into its conspiracy theory, but it's not set in to make this more competitive. It makes it worse. It hurts smaller
yeah,
clubs, and it doesn't do anything to big clubs. Especially you allow City to like make up sponsorship income. They can spend whatever they want, and
yeah.
it's hurting. I think I saw Wolves about to get hit with financial fair play relegations, which is going to hurt them
Really,
next season. At least I don't think it's actually been announced, but that's been kind of in the papers or rumors. And Leicester, apparently, they didn't spend this entire summer because apparently they were under some financial fair play thing.
really. Huh.
So yeah,
Interesting.
I think that's a conversation going forward as well. Um, yeah, like you said, yeah, they won the Community Shield last year. Beating City. They beat Chelsea in the FA Cup, and what's crazy is Leicester. I picked them to actually finish in fourth last season, and what happened right after the Community Shield is Fofana broke his leg in a stupid friendly game, and that really kind of took them down. You're right
Yeah,
about Schmeichel. Danny Ward didn't work out at all, and there are three signings to save them in January. Which Christensen, I think, was an okay signing. He, he hit and miss, but it is what it is. Harry Suter, I think, struggled a little bit. He seemed like he could only play in these games when you didn't necessarily have to worry about pace. When they played a back three, it seemed like you had Suter to kind of just win balls in the air.
yeah,
Um, and Tete, they finally brought in someone like Tete, and I think what's weird about that is we didn't really see him that much. And the idea was to like play Madison or play Harvey Barnes, and Teddy was kind of on the back burner as well. So yeah, there were and then at the very end was replacing Rogers with Dean Smith. I just didn't think. I think that was crazy. If you had someone
Yeah.
established, I understand, but it's not like it's one thing for bringing in Roy Hodgson, someone that's kind of done this before. Dean Smith has taken teams down before, and he was
Yeah.
fired from Aston Villa because he was about to take them down. I'm pretty sure Dean Smith went down with Norwich
He did.
before it. So
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
and he just never set them up confident. And I never saw him play Iheanacho together with Barty and Madison. There was one time he did it, and Leicester ended up scoring a goal if they scored it versus Leeds. Uh,
Oh, right.
but we just and he got injured, in that game. So that because he was finally starting to fly a little bit, and yeah, the speed and the downfall of this is crazy. Like Jeremy said, 2 seasons in a row they were second place on Christmas Day.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's wild.
So this is kind of a foolish question, but I guess I'll ask. Because momentum's kind of a thing. Do you think if the World Cup hadn't happened in the middle of the season, Leicester would have stayed up?
Oh, yeah. Well, they were starting to put together some performances right before the World Cup. I don't know, Ben. I think I don't know. I think maybe, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It's tough. It's so tough to say. But they were playing very well before the World Cup. It wasn't a timely break for them. But I mean, anything could have happened to start that kind of downward slide anyway. Someone could have gotten hurt or whatever. So I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I think maybe they would have. I mean, you're talking about only 2 points, and they would have been out of it. So yeah, maybe one of those games is a win instead of the World Cup happens and then they come back and it's a loss because it's so close. So yeah, maybe Ben. I don't know. That's a good question though.
Because I'm kind of in between on that. Like another thing that happened was Madison basically got injured. Like the very final game before he scored in the game, and then he got hurt in that game, and he wasn't even able to return until like January. They always missed when Madison wasn't playing.
Yeah,
So maybe that would be kind of devil's advocate there. The reason why I wanted to I mentioned this because I didn't necessarily kind of expand on it. Maybe the reason why I think players running down their contract was a problem is if you get towards you're in a relegation fight and you get towards like the final few weeks or months of the season and you're not going to be with that team next year anyways, is your motivation to train as hard as possible? Does that kind of affect you? Do you do that extra sprint in a game to win a loose ball? I think maybe not, and I think we saw Tielemans and Madison yeah, towards the end. I didn't think necessarily were running as much. There's a chance to maybe sell some of these players because they're going to lose to lose Tielemans and Sorencho for free is crazy. That's
mhm,
maybe 80 million you could have done something with.
yeah.
So yeah,
And they
and
could have sold Tillmans for sure. He had plenty of suitors. So
yeah, because I think I remember saying something that I thought Tielemans to Arsenal was like done and dusted last
yeah,
season.
it looked good. Yeah, it looked possibly done for sure.
And I felt like Arsenal were always like the Leicester players. So I'm curious if maybe here's a chance to go pick your bag for free
Yeah,
if
yeah,
if you'd like some.
yeah. If you want Madison, go get him.
And then with West Ham, uh, d- 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 I guess the focus kind of turns to Fiorentina with a chance to kind of win some silverware. So we'll see.
Yeah, be huge.
Speaking of Arsenal and going after players, it seems like them and Rice are kind of going to be the teams or the story that newspapers kind of cover. So we'll see if that pans out as well.
Jeez. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of people trying to get Rice, I would imagine. A lot of competition.
Right. And with Leeds and Tottenham, the only thing with kind of the thing to say with Leeds is I kind of feel like other than Southampton, because I feel like Southampton are actually well placed here. Leeds, I do think, are actually in an okay spot to come back. This could be terrible, but you look at who they have. It's a lot of young guys: Somerville, Nanto, Sinistera, Rudder, Brendan Aronson. I think those players aren't necessarily going to be poached from necessarily Premier League teams. to be honest, and they're so young that maybe the championship would actually be okay for their development. I don't think Jack Harrison has done enough to necessarily be poached, and Bamford being injury prone. I think that's going to be that's going to war teams off as well. Maybe Rodrigo kind of gets a look, and maybe Tyler Adams. But that's
Yeah,
probably it.
Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call, Ben. Yeah, yeah, Rodrigo's pretty good. He'll probably get a look, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Yeah, Reuter would, I think, score a bunch of goals in the championship. Their defense still isn't good enough. I want to see them replace a bunch of guys, but yeah, they should have some decent attacking options. They're gonna have to bring in more, of course, especially if you lose Rodrigo. But yeah, yeah, we'll see. But big concerns about their defense.
I mean, they sold Calvert Lewin. I mean, not Calvin, Calvin Phillips, last season, and he was kind of he was supposed to be kind of a defensive midfielder that kind of helped their defense. And he was hurt for all of last season, and people kind of assumed, well, maybe that was the reason why they gave up all these goals. They gave up 157 goals in 2 seasons, Rex. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
what was it, like 70? Yeah, 78 and 79. And,
78, yeah.
they brought Cooper, or they had Cooper back, or in this game, it was Cooper and Patrick Struck, screwing up. I kinda think you could fault Eiling for some of these goals as well.
Yeah,
Um,
Ailing.
but, yeah, Furpro some weeks, Werber, some weeks. They never no one in the back line did their job. I thought, and when they did, Melee, I thought, was having errors.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about it a couple weeks ago. Maybe like if they had brought in Deitch, maybe they could have stayed safe. They just
That's the
maybe
one.
need that bit of organization or something.
And they were linked to him, and I actually thought it would be crazy to go from, like, Marsh's style to that. But you
Yeah.
look back, that's what they should have done. You're right. He would have at least got them structured. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
know what he would have been
Organize
able
the
to
D a
do
little.
with it, 'cause I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, true.
that is what, Allardyce tried to do. They're just so bad defending individually. I mean, this game was a great showcase why they had the season they had, because some of the spaces that Spurs were able to attack in
Yeah.
shouldn't exist. Someone like not someone like Kane. You know who he is. And speaking of Kane, he ends with 30 goals for the season. Oh, an insane season. I
Yeah.
mentioned I mentioned
Oh
some
yeah.
I mentioned something to on the text, and Alex kind of shot at me, or shot down at me. But I was like, I think this is more impressive than what Holland did. But
Ooh.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna I'm not gonna
Yeah.
take away what Holland did, but 30 goals in this team. He wasn't supplied
Yeah.
at all. Alex tried to compare him to what Ronaldo did last season, and I don't think that's necessarily comparable. I mean, Ronaldo got 17 goals for United last season. That's not 30. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
seemed he didn't have Son helping him for like first half of the season. He had to do it all himself, and he was able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. He didn't really have Son, and yeah, it's different. Like being scoring 30 goals for the eighth place team and scoring 40 plus whatever Holland did for the first place team. Obviously, like Man City has a lot more quality. Like you mentioned, they can really like build around servicing Holland. Um, I mean, Tottenham does like to build around servicing Kane, but Kane also, he would drop deep a lot too, to kind of initiate play and kind of be a little bit of a creator too.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, I kind of agree with you, Ben. 30 goals for him. The style of play that he kind of plays with that dropping back. I think it is more impressive than Holland, but obviously Holland, the numbers are just eye popping. But yeah, it's pretty nice for Kane to get 30 goals. That's incredible.
And with Spurs, everything now turns to who they bring in. We mentioned last week they were linked to this Feyenoord guy, and it doesn't seem like he's interested. And so I don't understand why you don't immediately phone Graham Potter. But now I have a different idea. They brought in Conte to try to they like taking Chelsea's hand me downs essentially, or Chelsea's you know whatever you would call it,
Seconds.
secondhand
Yeah.
value. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a guy that just won silverware. He's won silverware every club he's been at, essentially. Why not go get Thomas Tuchel? It doesn't seem like he's going to be invited back at Bayern. This would maybe be a way to keep Kane, because you bring in a proven winner. And Tuchel likes playing with a back three. That's already what Spurs already have kind of set in place. I just think that wouldn't be the worst idea to at least try, but I don't know if they're going to go
Yeah.
that way.
Well, the only thing that would worry me is I think Levy there's a reputation that Levy, doesn't necessarily go out and get the money available to buy the players that the managers want.
Yeah, and
And
Tuchel
Tuchel
likes
tends to clash with me. Yeah, so I don't know, but like if you took if you took Levy out or Levy bought the players that Tuchel wanted, yeah, I think Tuchel would be great. They need someone like that though, with like that kind of pedigree to get them back in the Champions League
y
because you don't want this gap where you're out of the Champions League to be too long, and sometimes it tends to be when you get knocked out. You kind of it's hard to get back in the top four when you get knocked out of it. You know?
well, they also they reportedly targeted, or they was thinking they were gonna target De Zerbi, and then they're like, "No, we don't wanna do that way." And that apparently upset
Stupid.
them. Why not
Yeah,
it's not necessarily the same thing, but, why not go get Graham Potter so at least he's worked at a club that is known to build up, kind of gems and at least create something.
yeah,
That's maybe not necessarily what Kane wants to hear, and maybe that's not gonna win you anything, but that will give you stability. And what Spurs do not have right now is stability. It's crazy
yeah,
how
yeah,
you think about how the season started. It was maybe like the defining game before the World Cup was like between Spurs and Chelsea, and it was that handshake between Tuchel and Conte. And
that's right.
it's crazy how like both of them ended up kind of having the same fates.
Yeah, what's crazy too is like it wasn't that long ago that Tottenham were in the Champions League final, and now they're in finishing in eighth place in the Premier League. So it's another example of how the mighty can fall in only a couple years. I mean, it's crazy.
Champions League last year, yeah. And
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're any close to be able to get back up, especially with Spurs. Spurs are just gonna I mean, not Spurs. Newcastle have upped the level, now. It's another team that's probably gonna be always in that mix, which makes it even
yeah,
harder. And if you don't have an owner that's able to help you reload, you've gotta have an operation to find some scouting, which it doesn't seem they
yeah.
necessarily have. Um
Because if Chelsea figure things out too, there's another club. Villa is on fire. So yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot of competition. You got to figure it out fast.
And, one last thing to say of Ryan Mason, I think it is interesting that he did come in and experiment a little bit. It didn't go
Yeah.
great. I think it went better than what Lampard did at Chelsea.
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
think that's
Yeah.
worth saying as well. I'm not saying they should stick with him, but I think it's good that he came in with the right mindset to experiment. We saw Kulusevski tried in different positions, and I thought it worked out a little bit. We saw Pedro Porro tried a little bit more attacking in this game, and it worked out a little bit. And so you know, at least he's given whoever comes in next year to think about that, where it seemed they were kind of rigid a little bit in how they were playing, and I think that's what Lampard should have done. So I think
Yeah.
that's worth kind of saying as well.
Yeah. 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 I definitely agree. Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, they got it figured out too because they just like piddled around like trying to find a coach, and you end up with these guys like the assistant manager, and things like that. So, but at least I do think the players like Ryan Mason. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a mess there.
I mean, they wouldn't go this way, but they had poached and they got poached from Southampton. Uh, Hasenhüttl is available.
Ooh.
Probably not. No.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think the fans would like that, but we'll see. I think the fans want like a known commodity. I think like you said, I think a Tuchel or someone that's been very experienced in the upper echelons of European soccer, Champions League, things like that. I think
mhm.
they need someone with experience. But I mean, Hasenhüttl has experience in the Premier League at least. I mean, that could be something that works. Don't. I don't think the fans would like that. I think they'd be mad.
Give him. I'd like to see Hasenhüttl play with more established players because in Bundesliga he took Leipzig to second, challenging Bayern. And it's just every single year he was doing magic keeping Southampton up. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
uh,
And you saw without him what happened. They got
give him
relegated, so
give him Harry Kane. Let's see how it worked. Now he would make him. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was. I think it's interesting. No one's tried to go get him. In either Premier League or anywhere. I don't.
anywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cheeky pick though, Ben. I like that. Yeah, it's got me thinking that question, which, I think
Oh,
you
that's what I
it
like
would
to.
be fun to see that.
Uh,
It would be.
all right. And we'll move on to Brighton and Aston Villa, and it's kind of funny how towards the end of the season, how both these teams are kind of finding along with each other. Brighton had just fresh off their draw versus Man City, was able to clinch their spot in Europa League, and with this result for Aston Villa, they were able to kind of do the same. They were able to get their spot in Conference League, and I think one thing that's really cool is both clubs, players and fans have really embraced this. I'm trying to think like if Spurs have gotten Conference League. I don't think anyone would have really cared. The Aston Villa like fans just like super they erupted over this result, and Emery just kept speaking about how he was like, I want it. And you know how Emery
Mhm.
likes doing in these Europa competitions.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's cool. I think it's cool also for Brighton to embrace being in Europa, and both these clubs actually have a lot of young players that they can play. So maybe this wouldn't necessarily disrupt league form, but we'll see.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that would be the crucial thing. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to watch both of them in European competition. It's going to be awesome.
Because especially them embracing it, and we saw West Ham embrace it, maybe not
Mhm.
necessarily to their benefit,
Yeah.
but it's at least, to take it seriously, I think it is cool, and then, so, I mean, in this game, it got started with, Douglas Luiz, getting the first goal, and then, Ollie Watkins, and then Undev made it, 2-1, and, that's how it ended up, ending. Jeremy, I think, actually watched picked this game out of all of them. Brighton's, like, his second favorite team. And the kind of the funny thing was he was like, "I don't understand how Brighton don't have 10 goals." And then I looked at the XG, and Aston Villa actually had like, 2 or 3, and Brighton only had 1. He was like, "What the hell?" And apparently it's because a lot of Brighton's chances came from like being offsides. But it was close. Like
Oh.
Villa tried playing that goofy high line kind of thing again, and in some cases it was working. But they actually, I think the goal that Undev ended up scoring on was kind of tight as well. It seems Emery likes doing that. Klopp was doing this last year. You can play a high line because VAR makes it so complicated. Where if you're like just if your breath is offsides, like it'll
Yeah,
catch
you
it.
just never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
And, yeah, to touch on the Aston Villa goal, I think it's very fitting that, Douglas Luiz gets it. I mean, so minutes before this, McGinn had won the ball off McAllister, and he tries to feed in Ollie Watkins, and, Will still kind of, clears the danger, sweeper keeper style, or Jason Steele, and then Villa win the ball back, and Douglas Luiz kind of drives it forward up the wing, with the ball before finding Jacob Ramsey ahead of him, and then, Ramsey kind of waits and then picks out, Douglas, Luiz. And Ramsey was a big part for the second goal as well, finding Ollie Watkins. So what happens here is, Brighton players for some reason were like really agitated in this game, and you saw
Mhm.
it really show up here because McAllister again it looks like he's fouled. But McGinn kind of wins the ball back again. He beats Feltman, then he beats Feltman to a 50-50 ball, and then Leo Bailey plays a wonderful through ball to Jacob Ramsey. And Jacob Ramsey is completely unmarked because the right back Feltman has tried to win a ball and he's missed. And so at that point, Brighton have no chance. And Jason Steele comes out to try to close Ramsey off, and Ramsey just kind of does like the FIFA pass to Watkins
Mhm.
to kind of just tap it in. And Watkins back to scoring. He missed the PK last week. It didn't affect him. He went on a dry spell a little bit, but he runs and does so much work without the ball. It doesn't really matter. And another person that just runs tirelessly for Aston Villa is Jacob Ramsey. And Ramsey gets 2 assists here. He had a chance to actually score one himself. There was a ball kind of cut in a little bit in the second half that somehow he actually hit over the bar from like 5 feet away. But to touch on Brighton, it was basically we already got our Europa League lineup. So we saw Yassine Ayari get his debut. We didn't see Caicedo. Caicedo came on in the second half. Uh, and we saw, Barnette. We didn't see Matoma. We did see Enciso kind of play in Matoma's spot. And man, Enciso had a worldie versus Chelsea a couple weeks
Oh,
back.
yeah.
Had a worldie versus Man City. And he was putting who's the left back for the right back for Aston Villa, Matty Cash.
Ash.
Matty Cash did not
Yeah.
enjoy playing against Enciso, and his
Oh, got
reward,
a yellow card too.
his reward for finally having Enciso come off was facing Matoma again. So Matty Cash
Yeah,
did
yeah,
not enjoy
yeah.
this game. Um, I think it was a nice clash of styles. And it was an entertaining game. I don't think the shots adjust do a good job to explain that because Villa only had 12 shots, Brighton only had 8 shots. But
Right.
a lot of it was I think that's misleading. And, Brighton, I think, had their moments. On the ball, they took risks, they broke lines, and, just maybe the negative is they didn't get enough shots of those to count. Ferguson, specifically, had a couple of times where, the few times he was kinda played through the ball, he wasn't able to get to beat, Emi Martinez. So, I mean, Ferguson maybe could have done a little bit better, but, that's just kind of it's being a little harsh.
Mm. No, I agree though.
But to touch on, so we start off with Aston Villa. Emery comes to Villa Park and not only rescues Villa from Gerrard, maybe taking them down. He gets them into a Europe competition, and you imagine he'll take seriously, as we've said. And
Yeah.
let's see, I don't want to necessarily start off with yeah, we kind of mentioned that with Spurs. Villa to have a couple youngsters. Cameron Archer, I think, did well in his loan for somewhere in the championship, might have been like Middlesbrough, and they have that Duran guy, a young striker, so you can give him games,
Yeah.
maybe rest Ollie Watkins in some of these. And I saw that they're linked to Real Madrid's Asensio now,
Ooh.
so that'll be kind of wild. And
Yeah.
then
They also have Diego Carlos too. They paid a decent amount of money from Sevilla to get
Mhm.
him, and he's been hurt a bunch, but he was on the bench in this one. Maybe I mean he's a good player when healthy. Maybe he's another guy that they can use.
I think that's a good shout, just kind of to bring him up because the first thing that Gerard did this season is because he got Diego Carlos, he was like, "All right, Tyrone Mings, who was their captain at that point, stripped
Mhm.
him and benched him, and he benched him versus Bournemouth, and they lost that game basically because they couldn't defend Kiefer Moore in the air.
Yeah,
And then Tyrone Mings, has turned around and actually was one of their more important players down the stretch, and
yeah, it's a good partnership, Mings and Kansa.
Emery has come in and really just improved everyone. Ollie Watkins went on that hot streak after Emery shipped out Ings. That worked out.
Yeah,
Douglas Luiz, I think, played his best football for Villa in these final months. He finally started to add some goals to him. And there was speculation he was going to leave in January as well. And I think he signed a new contract and he enjoyed his football. And they got Barbecue Kamara on a free, which
he's
doesn't make
great.
sense.
Yeah,
To me, he
yeah,
was always a Champions League kind of Europa style of player, and he's going to get his shot in Conference League. And eh, they were without him a little bit. He had a couple bad injuries, but when he was able to play, the when the way Brighton were pressing him, he was able to just kind of find his way out of danger. He wins duels, and he's progressive with his passing. He's a fantastic player, and to get him for free is just shocking for a lot of
yeah,
clubs.
yeah. He's a player that a lot of clubs could use too. So yeah, for Villa to get him for free, it's really, really, really good business.
And we spoke about a number of players that Emery has improved a little bit. We should touch a little bit on Jacob Ramsey. He gets the 2 assists here. He showed a little bit something with Gerrard, I thought, last season, but it wasn't necessarily working this year. The sky's the limit to him. I don't necessarily know if England's going to be looking at him, but he's got pace to him. He's got a knack for when to deliver across. He can pick out a run when Ollie Watkins makes it. He can finish chances. He has a good shot on him and good work rate on him. And so and he's still crazy young. And so I don't necessarily know if he was up there for Young Player of the Year, but the way he finished the season, maybe next year he will be. And just a number of players that Emery has come in and improved, and I think it's good for him because uh, maybe his time at Arsenal was yeah, miswritten. I guess I'll say. I'm not going to say it's a failure because I think they finished like fifth, right? Or
Yeah,
they just
somewhere
didn't
in Europa League.
they
Yeah,
just didn't finish in Champions League, and I think he got them to a final. Um,
yeah. I think they went. I forget how many, but it was a bunch of games without losing a game. A lot. It was like 18 or something like that,
oh, whoa, I didn't know that.
or 13. I don't know. It was a lot of games that they didn't lose. It was quite a streak for a while.
Huh. So, I mean, was that with, I don't necessarily want to go down memory lane, but was that with, like, Jared kind of, leading the line or
I don't think so.
I
Um,
I can't remember that part in Arsenal's,
I don't know.
but
I don't think he was there though. I can't remember.
okay. I mean, and we'll move on to Brighton, who, story of the season in many respects, given they have their coach taken from them, when they were in 4th place, and, they turn around and somehow find a way to find someone maybe better, and what's funny is, he lost his first 5 games, that's worth saying as well, and he got a lot of stick. Or Brighton got a lot of stick from a bunch of angry pundits being like, "Why did you bring in this foreign manager over a more established British manager?" I remember like people were upset Dyche wasn't given a job, and these numbers I want to read these off to you. So they were fourth in goals scored this year. They scored 72, and that was more than Newcastle, Man United, and Spurs. And they were third in big chances. And last season, Brighton were 15th with 46 and 11th in big
Mm.
chances. So he turned around and made Brighton. Really, the only thing he did was he started playing Evan Ferguson. But he made this team into a goal scoring beast in a way that Potter just was not able to do. So that's worth kind of that. Really, that's where you get started with Brighton.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to touch on their scouting too, we talk about it a lot, but to get some of these guys that they got from unheard of leagues, pretty much unheard of. I mean, the Stupinan, Casado, Matoma from the J League. It's really impressive scouting. Undav, Ferguson could come good. Yeah, they're talented. It's gonna be fun to see them in Europa League. And they might have to strengthen a little bit too, but like you said, they got some young players. They still have like Billy Gilmore. They have Paul Van Heck is a young guy too that
Mhm.
could be good. So yeah, it's gonna be fun to see. Really fun. Both these teams, honestly.
I mean, De Zerbi's come in and really, in a single season, change how a lot of people view the game. View build up, view how to attack, view how to manipulate what he calls a fake transition moment when like you create a transition moment when you have the ball, because you draw teams onto you. And another thing that's crazy is so it's not just Potter. I mean, it's not just De Zerbi. Just Brighton as a club seem to have succession plans in place. You lose Potter, who cares? Newcastle poached one of their football directors in scouting. And, Potter took a lot of his staff to Chelsea, and it doesn't matter. They're still able to just apparently their owner actually owns some kind of analytical model, and he's like their owner is part of their scouting or is part of their, uh, yeah, director side, and
Hmm.
he's got something that has, stats on, like, every player in every league, and that's how he's able to kind of, see these gems, and
Uh, Moneyball style.
speaking of succession plans, it does seem like at Liverpool and McAllister is kind of one of those everyone kind of expects it to happen. And the Serbians wanted to say, he wanted to thank him at the end of the year or in his post game. He mentioned the same with Casado, and I haven't seen Casado's name actually mentioned with a specific club. So I'm curious if there was something
Yeah.
in place in January where because he was trying to go to Arsenal. I don't necessarily know if something was actually, put pen to paper and it's just been kind of, in the back
Hmm.
burner or not, and something will come out now that the season's over. But it was interesting that the survey said the same things of Casado that he said of McAllister. So I think we'll see
Hmm.
Casado move.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. But I don't know. I don't know. It'd be fun to see both of them stay and kind of see what they could do.
I want
But
McAllister.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they McAllister might be like, it's a chance to go to like a really really big club in Liverpool. So like, it's hard. It's gonna be hard for McAllister to say no. That's kind of one of the clubs that you probably dream about playing for. Not that I mean, I'm not trying to
Yeah,
diss
I know.
Brighton at all. They're great too, but
I know what you're
Liverpool,
saying.
yeah, yeah, it's just hard to resist that offer. I would imagine.
I mean, if it was a club like that was in kind of a financial, well, I don't necessarily know if Liverpool didn't have Klopp, I don't think the actual draw of Liverpool itself would be enough. So I think
Yeah.
that's maybe worth saying something.
Well,
Um,
especially now without Champions League, I guess too. But
the fact that they maybe were able to allure someone like that without Champions League, I think is huge. Because I was really worried about that. But another player you kind of mentioned a few. This Incenso guy, I joked in our group text. They picked him off from a Paraguay farm, but really he was a no name in the football world 2 months ago, and he all of a sudden gets started playing, and he's got Kevin De Bruyne's like ability to strike a ball from distance, scoring a couple screamers down the stretch, and he can play winger. We saw him play on the left side in some of these games. Saw him played on the right side in some of these games. Played in the middle in the FA semifinal versus Man United and played well. And it seems either
yeah.
they knew they had him or not. It seems like they already have their Trossard succession plan in him.
Oh, yeah, yeah, maybe that's interesting. I'm trying to look up his stats because he had some big goals down the stretch.
I saw that in all of Europe, so he had 4 or 5 goals, and he's in the top 3 or 4 for all under 20 players in Europe for goals. And he didn't play that many minutes.
I think
Ferguson is on there as well. Uh,
yeah.
but I think
He
the
ended up he oh sorry, Ben. He ended up with 4 goals and 3 assists
4
total.
goals.
So not bad. And like you said, he only played in 20 games. Basically only participated in 23% of the Premier League games minutes wise. So yeah, that's a good turnaround for not playing that much.
They lose Lewis Dunk, and they were or not Lewis Dunk. They lose Sully Marsh, and they're like, oh, we'll just play in Sensor there, and it worked out for them. Uh, and it didn't have to play
Yeah.
Matoma this game, and Ciso,
Oh, absolutely.
took Matty Cash on skates. Um, one thing,
Yeah.
one final thing to kind of say on Brighton is Andrew's kind of talked to me about this a lot too. He's like when he watches games, so many teams don't like playing through the middle. And I was like, well, I actually went back and watched this game kind of on a replay because I just wanted to see McAllister. And there were like 8 times when
Mhm.
he faked going backwards or doing a side pass, which looks like that's the easy pass, but it seems like that's what teams want you to do. And he's able to create some space and slip something, to 8 to 10-yard pass upfield in the middle. And it seems Brighton are really good at finding ways to kind of manipulate how to get passes and more play through the middle than other teams. And another thing too is for a team that's supposedly all about possession, you hear about possession and you think, oh, this is going to be tiki taki stuff. They go direct a lot, and it still
Yeah,
works
that's
out.
true. Yeah. Yeah, they can do multiple styles, play multiple styles, and they can even change things. And like we saw, they can kind of bench Matoma, bench some other players, and still get younger guys and some experience, but they're still like they're still good players.
And maybe one final point to add with them is they are able to. It's worth saying this as well. They're able to play this way uh, because basically he's asking their center backs and keeper to take on a lot of risk. Jason Steele is basically an outfield player, to be straight up.
Yeah,
He I guess he is able to offer them something that Sanchez wasn't. He made the switch there, which helped them. But another thing too is we didn't even see it in this game because Dunk didn't play in this game. But Lewis Dunk has been as good of a ball playing center back this season than anyone in the league, including someone like Diaz on Man City or anyone on Man City. I think it's worth a
yeah,
shout out for Well. I think he finally got his England call up. That's more than worth it and deserving. He maybe doesn't have the pace to play eh, at the international level. I don't necessarily know, but Harry
mhm,
Maguire, I guess, has made England call ups all these years. So I don't necessarily think Dunk
yeah,
is much slower than him. And he's just
yeah,
Dunk has become a fantastic player with the ball at his feet. And
yeah. He really has. Yeah,
you have to when the way Brighton play, the way they're able to create numerical advances uh, by by having that space and for these attackers is these defenders have to be comfortable having people run at them. Having what they do is they force you, they bait you to bring push a lot of numbers forward. And if a center back doesn't like that, this doesn't work.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And let's see. And one final point to maybe say is all this pretty football can't just happen by itself. There has to be a physical component to it. And Brighton have been really good at winning the ball back this season. But I am worried about them losing both McAllister and Casado. If you're losing a lot of the steel in midfield, I do feel like they would look a little different. In this game they played without Casado, and one of the ways that Villa was able to score is they got the ball off McAllister, and there was just no other protection after there. Yassine
yeah,
Ayari looks like my size. They have guys like Billy Gilmore, kind of the same thing. Brunette. You don't want them to just target clever like tiny slender guys like speedy guys, which is like the Man City model. You need sometimes you need a little more steel. So I would kind of
yeah.
worry a little bit about that. It does seem like they might lose Casado. I would worry about that, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely have to replace him with someone that was very physical. That yeah, for sure. You can kind of get away with getting the smaller, fast guys out wide, but you're absolutely right. You need some hard tackling. You need someone that's going to win, first and second balls in the midfield. You need guys that aren't aren't going to be afraid to do the dirty work in the midfield. And then go up the field when needed. But yeah, it would be huge if they lost Caicedo. They get a lot of money, but they would have to find a player that's physical, like you said, get that steal back in the midfield. If they did lose Caicedo, it would be a big loss.
And if you're a Brighton fan, maybe there's no reason to worry about that because you have
Yeah,
you have a blueprint that you can look at or track record where you can be like, well, we lost Basuma, and we didn't even know about Casado like a year or two ago.
yeah.
So
Lost Cucurella, not a big deal. Yeah, that's
they,
all they do is like lose good players and
they seem
and
to.
replace them with like one or two other good ones we never heard of and make them into names. It's crazy.
And then we'll move on to Arsenal and Wolves. Arsenal had fun. Thanksgiving for them, I guess you could say. Five
Mm.
turkeys, I guess you could say, with Shaka getting a brace for his final game. We'll spend a little time
Yeah.
talking about Granit Xhaka. Then Saka scored, and then Jesus got a goal that I want to maybe touch on because I think this is what you need to see more of Jesus do. And then Kwar got the fifth. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I saw Arsenal have won 6 in a row on the final day. And this is back-to-back seasons. They scored 5 on the final day because they smashed
Wow.
Everton last year as well. Um,
Oh, right. Yeah, that's crazy.
and Wolves are a bit of a mess. And we'll spend maybe a little time talking about them. I don't really know. I think I'm worried about them more than any other team that's kind of stayed up. But we'll see.
Hmm.
Um, with Shaka getting the 2 goals, I want to touch on the first one because Jesus gets the ball in the white wing and he carries it, does a good job to kind of go at the left back Bruno, and then he floats across into the box. But if Shaka isn't there, this is pointless. So this is why someone like Shaka needs to make those runs from midfield and need someone with size to do it. And then
Hmm.
the second goal comes from Xhaka also kind of being a makeshift striker, being a body in the box where the ball just kind of finds him. And
Yeah.
Saka gets the third. And the thing to touch on here is this is what we've kind of been missing a little bit from Arsenal this past few months. You understand them getting tired and whatnot, but the
Mhm.
quick triangle passing, the understanding where each player is. So what happens is Odegaard, Trossard, and Saka kind of create this. So Odegaard draws 2 players onto him and then gets it to Trossard. And Trossard recognizes that Odegaard has drawn the right back to kind of follow him, and so that leaves Shaka all alone. And Trossard immediately finds Shaka, and then Kilman has to sprint to try to stop Shaka. And what he does is he cuts inside. Kilman kind of goes past him because he doesn't have the brakes on. And then Shaka has the quick chance. And there's no hesitation on Saka's part. And I feel like we've kind of seen that a little bit. And again, that can come from him being tired or playing with a nagging injury or whatnot. This was maybe
Mhm.
the best that Saka has looked in some time, and I think he signed a new contract, so maybe he had some
Yeah.
motivation there as well. Um, but the fourth goal comes from Trossard kind of doing a little Martinelli impression. He gets the ball wide and he gets well to get past the defender. It goes to the byline and gets a cross off. But Jesus is in the box, and he doesn't he jumps well, and he gets it's a good header. It's a good header into the box, and he scored in the air versus Liverpool. And I don't get why he doesn't do this more. Too often
Yeah.
when I watch Arsenal, you see him trying to look for the ball, and he's anywhere but inside the box. So it's good
Right.
to see at least this a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely he could use a little bit of the scoring more goals kind of target man in him. But I mean, yeah, he had a good season. I think he only
Mhm.
scored 10 goals, but he had 7 assists. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, next year he's going to have to probably be more of a target man and score a little bit more. Um, yeah, because like sometimes he just wasn't on the score sheet. Didn't really. I mean, he did some hard work, but he wasn't necessarily the central figure that you want your striker to be sometimes.
And the stats, I mean, 2.81, Wolves 0.45, 6 shots, 0 on target. Wolves went to the beach a couple games ago. Arsenal
Yeah.
14 shots and 8 on target. 8 on target, I think, is key because there have been a lot of games when I don't think that number's been nearly where it's needed to be. Uh,
Yeah.
so we did a deep dive on Arsenal last week. One thing I want to kind of get your touch on, I want to get your thoughts on Granit Xhaka because I think he has played his final game, scoring a brace, and I think he was more active this season as a goal scoring threat. I think maybe it's because uh, he had a little bit more of a different role with Partey, kind of being a little bit more of the defender, of the holder, that allowed Xhaka to maybe go forward a little bit more and be a little bit more of an attacking threat. And I don't necessarily know what he ended up with, but I feel like it's the most goals he's maybe had for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think he ended up with, I believe he got 7. Let me check real quick because he had,
Oh, I thought he got double.
yeah, he
Okay,
had a bunch of,
7.
maybe. Let me look, or at least 7 in the Premier League.
Because
My
he
internet's
like
so slow today,
I was
but
talking to Andrew. I think Shaka was his most frustrating player. Because he would see him score
oh
worldies.
yeah,
He looked such a different player when he was playing for his international playing for Switzerland than necessarily
oh
for
yeah,
Arsenal.
definitely,
Because he would go seasons where he only had like 1 or 2, but he would always be like bangers. Um, but just I thought this season he made clever runs. What he
yeah,
did without the ball was so big. He would go wide when Martinelli would cut inside, and he would be that outlet on the wide. He had some good crosses in. He'd recognize when to go forward and be a target in the box. And it's good that he's had this kind of
mhm,
season to kind of end off this way because uh, I remember him having that issue when he was captain and, like, threw the armband off. I don't know if Arteta was with him or not, and I remember that kinda
yeah.
being a negative, I thought people were
I don't
like,
think
"Oh
so.
oh, he's out." People were like, "Yeah, he can't, survive this," and he did.
Mhm. Oh, here it is, Ben. He ended up scoring 9 goals,
Okay.
in total competitions and had 7 assists. But the main thing was he had 7 goals, 7 assists in the Premier League, and no red cards, no second yellows, and only 4 yellow cards.
That's big.
So it's a complete opposite reversal. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be. He was a frustrating figure,
Yeah.
but this year he was great, and I mean, I'll be sad to see him go because I mean, I understand why he's leaving. Like, if you're trying to bring in, Rice and maybe some other players, like I get why he's leaving. But yeah, it kind of it's like, well, we had the taste of what he could do going forward, and we only had that for 1 year, and now he's gone. But he is, he's 30, so he's getting older. But yeah, it's a great last season at least, and yeah, man, it's an awesome story to have the fans booing him, to now the fans are like shouting on the last day, "Don't leave."
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's good to see, and he, doing the lap of honor with his kids and stuff. So yeah, it's a really good redemption story. But yeah, I'm kind of sad to see him leave after he puts up 9 goals and 7 assists and doesn't get a red card. That's what we need the whole time.
'Cause I don't necessarily know if it was last season, but there was, like, one point where, like, Arsenal led the league in red cards, and it was, like, double for anyone else. That was
Yeah,
kinda
and Shaka
funny.
had a
Yeah,
bunch.
it was always Shaka.
Always
Or
Shaka.
like Douglas Luiz or whatever. Uh,
Hmm.
let's see, yeah, because I think well, replacing him is gonna be interesting 'cause, I don't think you can do it with, like, Fabio Vieira. I don't think he's the kind of same body. Maybe he can, because I think you need someone that can be physical, in that side. So you being linked to Rice makes sense. Either to play with Thomas Partey or to be in the back or to be a little bit more advanced. And personally, I think
Yeah,
it'd be fantastic to see Rice in a more advanced role. I feel like he'd maybe flourish a little bit better than necessarily kind of playing deeper. But in a weird
yeah.
way,
I think he could do what the stats that Shaka did. Yeah,
I kind of think you guys are targeting both Rice and Caicedo. And if you get that, Arsenal immediately go. I think I would put them over City to maybe start the season next year. We'll see because like
yeah,
you can't copy what City do. But one thing well, you maybe one thing I remember, or one thing I was thinking about is, well, how did City beat you guys? What did they look to exploit? And it was when Thomas Partey was in the middle by himself, and once you're able to kind of get Kevin De Bruyne past him, City scored a couple goals just by Arsenal being kind of weak in the middle. I thought,
mm,
especially when someone like Partey wasn't there, and so
was hurt. Yeah,
shore up that middle somehow because I don't think Jorginho can necessarily do it by himself. I think
no,
maybe get Lavia of Southampton. Maybe you could kind of target him, but I don't think you should just get Declan Rice. He's going to be expensive, obviously. I think you should look at something else, and I don't know. We'll see what Arsenal do in the market because uh,
yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I don't want them to just kind of sit on this, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, also, there's big news about Saliba now. He apparently is demanding a lot of money,
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
for
too. Yeah.
wages. Yeah, so Arsenal might be balking at that, and I mean, they definitely need him, and they need to pay him. I was looking at his stats. When he was healthy and playing in the Premier League, they had 21 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses, and then as soon as he's hurt, they dropped to 5 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses. So
Maybe significant.
that alone, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to pay him. That you need him. I know it's a lot of money, but you got to pay him. And Arsenal are notorious for like not. not raising that wage cap because it was a
Liverpool
long time
Liverpool
that they
had
were
this
like, we
issue.
won't pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't pay more than 100,000. But the times are changing, and they had to change with them, so they got to pay him. I think.
Well, they did. Did Arsenal break their wage structure to pay Aubameyang?
I think so. I
And
think
that
they
they probably
upped
didn't
it.
like that because
Yeah,
that didn't work out. Um,
yeah, probably.
Yikes.
But I mean, this guy's so good though,
I di
and he's young still.
Yeah, that would be you'd have to
He's
replace
like
him.
22.
I don't think
Yeah, and I don't know.
you can't do it with Holding. Kiwar was interesting, but I don't necessarily know if I would wanna go into the season with him kinda
Yeah,
being the main guy. We did see Ben White
yeah,
play center back for the last couple of games. You know,
yeah,
you saw Partey tried basically as right back, doing, like, the Pep thing, but it was Ben White at center back, not right back. Maybe that could be the
yeah,
idea.
yeah. It could be. Yeah.
And if that's the
He actually
case
had a pretty good year. So
if that's the case, would you like to see them target a right back? And I have an or
yeah.
a guy that could play in midfield and right back? Because I have a
Mm,
guy in mind, that just got relegated. Um, I'd be interested if Arsenal would look at Tyler Adams. Um,
mm, mm.
I don't necessarily
I
know
don't
if
know.
he'd start for them, but
Right.
it seems like he could maybe do what Zinchenko does a little bit. I've always thought
Mm,
he's better than what he's been asked to do. Maybe that's just kinda like my
at
USA
least.
kind of stuff talking. I would take him at Liverpool, to be honest.
Mm.
'Cause
Yeah. I mean, he'll probably go somewhere. So be interesting to see where he goes and how he does.
if you can play Ben White, and if that's the idea, maybe shift Ben White to that second center back spot, you need a right back. So,
Yeah. Tommy's been hurt a bunch, so you can't
yeah,
really
I wouldn't
necessarily count on him.
I don't think we saw Tomiyasu, in that first Man City game, and he gave a goal to Kevin De Bruyne. He didn't like being
That's
pressed.
right.
I would no. That would not be my, if I was running the club, that would not be my option. But yeah, 'cause,
Yeah.
and, yeah, we saw down the stretch you guys missing Zinchenko, getting him back, we'll see, but another thing too is Zinchenko was playing in midfield, and as good as Zinchenko is with the ball, you need someone that can you have needed some defensive cover, some kind of physicalness next to him. That's what Xhaka was able to offer sometimes, so you need to get that Xhaka replacement, spot on as well. Um,
Yeah. Definitely.
and then with Wolves, you gave up 6 to Brighton, you gave up 5 here. I'm worried about them. I really am. I think they're gonna lose Moutinho. I think he's walking. Ruben Neves is possibly out the door as well. I don't really they do have Acuna and Sarabia that they brought in. They didn't necessarily get as much game time as I was expecting them to get. So there's that. Neto hasn't recovered from his ACL injury, which is a real shame, and Yamina is kind of a similar story. And,
Yeah.
because they haven't really been able to replace, missing what those guys offered, because Wolves for the longest time seemed one of the more safe and stable clubs, and just again, they're another story where just a season or 2, with an injury or 2, and they're in trouble. And I don't necessarily know if Lopetegui is gonna be back next season for them. So, yay, we'll see.
Yeah, he's the only hope I would have for him is him staying. So if he's gone, I would think they'd be in big trouble. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable if he was staying. But yeah, it's a big summer for them. They need a striker. They had some stopgaps like Diego Costa just didn't really work. So it's going to be a big summer for them too.
And, we mentioned, a couple Iheanacho for a couple of these clubs. That would be one. One thing I wanted to ask you is, would you take Iheanacho? Or would you take anyone, on Leicester?
Yeah. Well, I take. Oh, there's a rumor that Arsenal might be interested in Castagna. But yeah, I mean, I would take Madison, I'd take
Ooh,
Barnes, I'd take Iheanacho, I'd take Tielemans, I'd take any of those guys for sure.
interesting. 'Cause you would take Tillmans, because I know you were
Yeah,
I know they were linked to him.
yeah, they were linked to him, but yeah, I'd take any of them. I think, I mean, Tielemans wouldn't necessarily start, but he could help. I would think.
Here's a chance for you to get some of those guys for a haircut. So we'll see if Arsenal kind of do they've always been linked to those guys.
They have been, yeah, yeah. They were linked to Madison a couple of years ago. Tielemans a lot of this year, so
And, I feel like it was Arsenal with the number 1 club that were trying to get Matt Vardy after his big season,
that's
which
right.
didn't necessarily
Yeah,
materialize. So
yeah.
it's funny. Arsenal have, like, poking that Leicester club. So here's a chance to pop the
We'll
balloon.
see. Yeah.
And then we'll move on to Liverpool and Southampton. This one ends 4-4 in an absolute crazy game. I'm glad it doesn't necessarily matter. If Liverpool had a chance, would have had a chance to actually get Champions League, and they had finished with this, I would have not been able to do the show today, Rex. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I think that
it would be
that kind of
bad.
factored into the players' minds. 2-2. We saw basically another reason why it didn't matter is Klopp went out with basically the it's your last day kind of lineup. Played James Milner. Played without Kanate, Virgil van Dijk, played without Allison, and this was life without Kanate, Virgil van Dijk, and Allison, and it's not a good life.
Yeah.
And life with James Milner
Yeah.
is not a good life as well. Um,
Yeah, and Gomez Matip partnership not good enough either.
Gomez, yeah, Gomez hasn't had the best. He's had a couple injuries here and there, but there's been a lot of talk that Gomez might be like the next great English right back or center back, and or no,
Yeah.
not right back, center back. And the more times he gets chances, he definitely can't play in center back. Maybe he can play in a back three somewhere, or maybe he can play right back somewhere. I've always kind of wanted to see him
Yeah.
actually try it in Trent's possession with Trent actually in midfield. But he gets ball watching way too easily. He doesn't have the instinct to play center back. I don't get it.
Mm.
And you saw that for a couple of these goals. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
because I do want to actually go over the goals. I mean, the first one comes from Diego. Southampton just kind of play from the back, and this is kind of the risk of it. We've seen the rewards of Brighton, but when you don't pull it off, it's almost a goal every time. And Lavia basically passes the ball to Jota, and he finishes it. And then Liverpool score with Firmino. It's cool to see Firmino get a goal in his final game. He started to
Yeah.
score when he was gotten a chance to play, and he takes it well. He fakes a shot and gets a couple of Southampton defenders to go to the ground and picks his spot. But the goal comes from Trent Alexander-Arnold, having like a 25-yard ball, low and up the middle. Henderson doesn't play this kind of ball, and it finds Fabinho's feet. Then Fabinho finds it Firmino in the box. But this is kind of it's a perfect example of Trent playing this more central, deeper position. It makes their attack so much better because it's not just crossing the ball in and just kind of hoofing it and trying to uh, you know see what happens. It's finding feet and being clever. Um,
Yeah.
but and it was 2-0. The announcers were like, "Well, I think that's done and dusted, Jim." And then Southampton get a chance, so they get the warning here. So Alcaraz swings the ball over to Walcott. Walcott gets across off, and Matip and Trent are kind of forced to target three guys. And what happens is Sulemana tries a pike, and it doesn't come off. But Milner is a passenger here, and Trent's forced to cover too many guys, and you see that for the goal. So James Ward-Prowse scores, and they got the warning. And Alcaraz, it's kind of similar. Alcaraz gets the ball on the right side of the box and draws four players onto him. And then he's able to find Sulemana, and Sulemana does a quick, clever 1-2, gets the ball back to Alcaraz, and then Alcaraz squares it to James Ward-Prowse, who is wide open because Trent is forced to cover three guys, in Elyounoussi, James Ward-Prowse, and Kyle Walker-Peters, who's kind of next to him as well. And Ward-Prowse finishes with a chance. But I want to touch on this because it's a great example of what can happen when just a few guys slack off. Curtis Jones and Salah aren't marking
Mm.
anyone. Milner is a shadow as well, and so when Southampton are first able to create an overload on the right side, it draws Gomez over to help Tsimikas. That forces Matip over. That shifts Trent over, and then Southampton are quickly able to work the ball to the other side, where they also were able to have an overload because Liverpool's guys weren't marking on that side either. So
Yeah, it's a tough job, but yeah, if you're a fullback, whoever's playing above you on your side, if they're not going to put in the defensive effort, their fullback on the other side is going to get up, and you're going to be in 2v1s all the time.
every time,
And
yeah.
Alexander had like Milner up in front of him as some help,
So
and then
glad he's.
Salah, who's not really going to come back. So
I'm so
yeah,
glad he's
yeah, it's
done. I was just like, good God.
yeah. Well, if you
Yeah.
don't have the legs to come back, yeah, and he doesn't. So
Neither does Henderson,
um,
and that's what's been kind of maddening.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, neither does Hendo. So yeah, at least you'll be rid of one of them, at least.
True. We'll have more
Maybe both. Maybe both. We'll
more
see. But
Henderson terrorism next year. Yeah, the bring in McAllister, and it'll still be on the bench for Henderson. We'll see.
oh gosh, yeah.
And then the second one comes from Silamana, and it sucks. It's a misplaced touch by Firmino, but we'll remember him for the goal. But he does kind of get Lavia is able to make amends because he was responsible for the Jota goal. He gets a tackle to win the ball back. He gets Walcott the ball, and then Walcott plays a fantastic ball for Sulemana kind of run it, and the run splits Gomez and Matip. Sulemana makes them look like they're not even there. And again, it's life without
Yeah.
Kanate, Virgil, and Allison. Because Sulemana gets a shot, it's close enough to Kelleher that I feel like he should save it. Kanate and Virgil, I feel Kanate at least, I don't think this goal happens with him. But Sulemana showed amazing pace here, and I don't. The only thing I'll say here is, why wasn't this guy played more?
Yeah.
Young and whatnot. Took because one time, a few times he was played, he would be all the way on the wing, and he'd be playing with like Paulo Nacho in front of him, who's not going to do anything. And Sulemana
Mhm.
played as a striker, was amazing in this game. Um,
Yeah, he had a great game.
and
He
him and
he he could be another that a club would take a risk and sign for cheap since he's on a relegated side, or he could lead
oh,
Southampton back, and he
one
could have a
hundred,
good
one hundred
championship
percent.
year.
If a team has a long term kind of look in mind, this guy has a diamond all over him. Uh, because the kind of pace, it's one thing to be fast without the ball. He's fast with the ball, and he takes players on, and obviously he has a finish on him. I mean, because the third goal he gets is another example where like so Liverpool are vulnerable in their new ship a little bit because Trent tries to win a 50-50 ball. But Lianco beats Trent the ball, so Trent's left his spot open. And so what happens is Lianco is able to find Suleiman the ball kind of in like that 45-yard area, still in Southampton's area, part of the field. But then Suleiman just has Fabinho in his way, and again he plays his best Fabinho like he's not there. And then neither center back are able to get close enough on Suleimana, so they just allow him to run all the way up the field. But another issue is Carlos Alcaraz is making a run upfield as well. So Sulemana can maybe play Alcaraz the ball. So that's the reason why Matip and Gomez kind of struggle here.
Mhm.
And those two, both Alcaraz as well. Alcaraz sometimes was kind of played as a lone striker by himself. And this partnership will do damage in the championship if they're able to stay together. And
Yeah.
both of them
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
should be looked at. And that's they're so young. I wouldn't necessarily want to put them in an 11 somewhere, but
Yeah.
store them for your depth, 100%. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, you could I mean, I don't know, maybe Brighton will take a chance on him or something if someone leaves, but yeah, Sulemana and Alcaraz were both pretty good players for sure, and Sulemana definitely showed what he could do in this game. I mean, he was on fire.
and this game was a reality check of what can happen when Fabinho is asked to do the lone protector job. Because there's been a lot of talk that Fabinho's back, Liverpool don't need to get a number 6 anymore. No, because he can't do that job anymore. He's been better down the stretch because he had Curtis Jones kind of playing next to him and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And what happened here was Trent Alexander-Arnold left him to try to get a loose ball, and Trent Alexander was played out of the area. And in that situation, you would have a right midfielder that could somewhat run back to help offer protection. It's Milner, so that wasn't going to
Mm,
happen here either. So Fabinho was all by himself and wasn't able to do anything, and that'll be an issue next year if they don't target someone like to do that job. And then
yeah.
because I think the idea is to try Henderson, and this is another reason why to touch on this because the fourth goal happens. Henderson comes on for Fabinho. I was like, oh, Klopp's going to do the Milner for Henderson thing one more time. Isn't that lovely? No, he played both of them together. He moved Milner to left back and put Henderson in the middle. And the first touch Henderson has is he gives the ball right away to Adam Armstrong. Adam Armstrong's able to just dribble upfield and finishes the shot. Um,
Yeah.
but so that just shows you, no, Henderson can't be the idea either. He can't be the long term number 6 solution. I know Klopp loves him. I think Henderson has been playing in the middle anyways this season because it's less running to do side to side in the middle than to go all the way out wide and to
Yeah.
do a job on the wing. He can't. He struggles in this situation as well. He can be a backup, but you need to get someone else. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he could be a decent backup, but he can't be the main starter.
And then Liverpool, the reason maybe to be a little bit more hopeful is they woke up after this. Klopp brought like 4 subs on. Not only doing the Henderson and Milner thing, he brought on Elliott, brought on uh, uh, Luis Diaz. And what happened is you saw Salah playing a little bit more narrow, and the combination play between Elliott, Jota, and Trent created a couple really good chances. Square balls across the Southampton goal that no one kind of was able to get on the end of. But here Gakpo was, and Elliott gets to play the ball played from Jota, and he could do a lot of things here. But what he does is he immediately tries to opt to flick the pass to Trent running onto it, and Trent sends a perfect hard ball across the goal that it's just a tap in. But
Mhm.
they just kind of went through Southampton like they weren't even there. This was really, really good. And then they get the fourth goal a minute later. Luis Diaz has good skill to keep the ball from going out of bounds. He floats a nice pass to Salah, kind of in the middle of in a pocket of space in the middle of the field, which is good. and then Salah drives the ball forward, and he sees Jota ahead of him. And Jota starts offsides, but he gets back on and he bends his run beautifully. And then Jota has a fantastic hit. So many times this season, Darwin Nunes or whoever has been in this spot and has not been able to put this chance away. And we haven't had Jota for a lot of the season, and you maybe saw that hurt up a little bit. A few
Yeah.
times when Jota was able to play, Klopp kind of benched him for someone else. This is why you need to play him. This guy is a fantastic finisher. He'll make you throw your phone on the ground 15 times, but he'll find 1 or 2 chances a game and put them away.
Yeah, and he had some big goals too down the stretch.
He really did.
He was involved quite a bit, scored a bunch. Yeah.
I mean, this game was the end of the season game that didn't really matter for both teams. Southampton had 15 shots and 10 on target, and Liverpool had 30 shots and 8 on
Yeah.
target. 23 shots though in the second half after Klopp made his changes.
Wow.
So I think
45 shots total. Whew.
well, it was fine. It was you attack, I attack,
I mean,
a little bit like that.
yeah. This is kind of game though where I would have loved to have watched just this game. It's another point to Alex where it's like, if this game had been, at a different time or like maybe late on a Saturday because the Bayern game was too good to pass up. But yeah, this would have been an incredible game to fully watch. And instead, I ended up watching zero of it because all the games were on the same time.
Yeah. Well,
But
'cause I watched the Everton game. That was awful. I was able to
yeah,
actually I was
I watched Everton too. Yeah,
with
it was.
with the Peacock, I was able to do the replay, and I did actually watch it. I did
Nice. I
actually
might have
watch
to do
it
that
all the way through because
live.
it was fun.
Oh,
No, 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 not live.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not live. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that because eight goal thriller, and like comebacks galore too. It was just like Liverpool punch, Southampton would punch right back. It was awesome.
Well, it was another thing too. It was like so many times, like especially last week, they struggled versus Aston Villa to kind of Aston Villa were playing, baiting them into a high line, and Liverpool didn't really have a way to kind of play through that. And when Aston Villa were actually playing deep in the second half, they weren't able to kind of break through their boxes. And what I saw in here was Southampton were trying to do the same. They were playing compact in that second half, and Liverpool were actually playing through them. The way they were able to create chance after chance was really at least something for me to be hopeful about next season because like Luis Diaz was beating people 1v1, that was creating spaces for others.
Hmm.
Gakpo was in the right spaces. He wasn't trying to look for the ball outside the box. No, he was being in the box, being aggressive. Salah was being in the middle. It wasn't being on the touchline. And Trent was sending ball after ball, and something to be hopeful about because sometimes I've wondered if the only thing Liverpool work on is pressing and goal kicks. I never really see them
Mm,
have good final third play. Sometimes like it's just like hit and hope essentially, or we'll try to find
mm.
Salah on a transition. Uh, we
Yeah,
we
yeah,
saw
or
we saw
counterattack.
we saw a little bit more in this game, so yeah. Um, but to touch on Southampton, I mentioned with Leeds, I'm actually quite confident that they'll be able to stay up if they can hold on to their players. Probably lose
Mm,
James Ward-Prowse and Kyle Walker-Peters, maybe Lavia. And I think it's going to be a name that people look at. But not just Alcaraz and Sulemana. They have Nathan Tella to add. Aribo was tried last week. Maybe
mm.
he won't work out. Seiko Mar,
I forgot about him.
I think could work out. And Adam Armstrong, he scored in here. He hasn't worked out at this level, but he killed it. I think for Blackburn. So he's already had success in the championship. They're probably going to hold on to him. I don't think unless another championships club is going to try to take him off him. So they're probably going to
Yeah.
have him next season. Their defense I think is good enough to where unless they lose like Belakacha, Salisu, Lianco
These two.
is decent.
Yeah, Leonko's not bad.
They
Yeah.
still have Livermento. Livermento was actually able to come on this half. I feel like Southampton are in a good spot here. I don't know who their manager is going to be, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we'll see. And they'll get those parachute payments from the Premier League, so they have a little bit more money to spend. And you would think Ward Prowse would probably get a decent. He's older, but he would get a decent transfer amount in. You would think so. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, they got some fun players. I hope some of them stay because I really think they could tear it up in the Championship and just in a year probably potentially be back in the Premier League. So I'd like to see them kind of stick it out for a year.
And for Liverpool, I mean they finished fifth. They could have gone worse. They did go on they found a gear a little bit towards the end of the season, but I think it's maddening how predictable this was. To be honest, because I remember doing I picked them second with Man City. But one thing I said in our little preview show was I was like they'll go as far as Thiago's health will take them. and I think that ended up showing up because what happened, Liverpool beat Man City in the Community Shield, and, they then the first game of the season, they played, Fulham, and Thiago was able to go 20 minutes before doing his hamstring in. And then
Right.
Naby wasn't available the entire season. And so you were forced to play Milner and Henderson way too many games together in midfield, and they started off the season, dropping points to Fulham, dropping points to Crystal Palace. They lost to Man United, and Milner and Henderson played in all 3 of those games. Uh, Another thing that kind of happened was t t Konate. Konate ended up getting hurt, after the Community Shield game, and Konate missed, most of that first half before I think they got him back maybe for the World Cup. I
Mm.
don't remember, but they missed Konate for a lot of that stretch as well. Yeah, they got him back before the Man City game. He played in a Europe in a Champions League game, and then he wasn't able to go. First Man City, Gomez actually played. But it was a weird game, it's a weird season because they started off, midfield being an issue, and then they didn't have Jota for a lot of that start. They finally got healthy. They looked healthy versus Arsenal, and what happened? They lost Luis Diaz to a bad knee injury, and then they lost Jota versus Man City after they beaten Man City, and so what did they do in the January window when everyone was like, "Go get a midfielder." Or you're going to play Henderson again, and it's not going to, or and Milner again, and it's not going to work. And they brought in Gakpo. And because I think they brought in Gakpo because Darwin Núñez wasn't working out, and going forward, I don't really know what the plan is for Darwin Núñez. Though he does look to me, he looks a player, uh, but he doesn't do the link up ability. And the reason why that's a problem is you don't have the midfielders that's able enough to create themselves. So if you can improve the midfield, you can take a little bit of that pressure off Núñez to kind of play a little bit without the ball. And he looks a terror. He had 20 big missed chances, which is insane.
Yeah.
So just improving that finishing, that will help. I think you can play Gakpo underneath him to be a little
Yeah.
of that creator. And they're linked to Alexis McAllister, which I really like, but I need to
Mm.
see them be linked to a little bit more. Stefan Bat
Injured midfield. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that happened was they thought they had this 18-year-old that was gonna be fine in Stefan Bacic, and he looked okay, but he got hurt. He, he looked his age for Real Madrid, and then he got hurt, playing at Bournemouth, and so you weren't able to play him the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And, they brought in Fabio Carvalho, and he got, like, 8 minutes the entire season, so that didn't necessarily work out, but
Yeah.
the midfield needs a overhaul, and it looks like the reports suggest it's gonna happen. So, because this season, and maybe last season as well, they haven't had legs, they haven't had recovery and pressers, they haven't had dual winners this entire season, and, like, the way Klopp plays is you have to have that. So, they linked to McAllister. I think I saw Ryan Gravenberch of Bayern. Um, I've saw Kefren Thuram yesterday, which I would be over the moon with, because, not just him, I want Liverpool to explore the French league. I feel like because West Ham got Paqueta in there, Newcastle got Bruno
Yeah.
Guimaraes, Real Madrid got Kemba Venga and Tchouaméni. Liverpool at least were linked to Tchouaméni. But I mean, there's a possible future Verratti, future Thiago player in Maxence Caqueret. But
Yeah.
Kefim Turam is like a 6'4", I don't want to say diamond, a freak player. Because he's got speed, pace. He can dribble with the ball. He carries. He's progressive with it. That would be something that just they haven't had like ever. Not even like Gini Ronaldo
Mm.
did stuff like that. You have McAllister that will help with possession. That will help with like the controller kind of job. But you need to have runners. I saw that they were also linked to Mano Kone of Gladbach, a
Mm.
DM with legs. Which thank God that would mean kind of the end of Fabinho being cooked. And
Yeah.
to be honest, it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna happen. But I wouldn't be against Tyler Adams. A counter pressing beast can play multiple positions. I think what they need to do is they need to think long term about Trent Alexander Arnold's minutes adding up.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, because eventually that shows up. That showed up with Chelsea and Reece James. It showed up with Dortmund and Jude Bellingham. Trent Alexander Arnold
Yeah.
has played a lot of games, not being injured. And you're asking him to play different positions. You're asking him to get 100 plus touches every single game, and to be important, be the focal point in every single game. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to find a way to shoulder some of that load off.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And he's an international player too, so like international breaks or like tournaments in the summer,
Well,
he's
it
not
works
gonna
out
have a
because Gary
break
Southgate
really.
doesn't play him.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you would imagine that he would still be in the mix, you would think.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that doesn't help either.
I mean, they finally have a director in football, and it looks like he's already on the job, looking at midfielders, and maybe it looks like Liverpool's owners weren't bluffing when they said they had this money saved up for Jude, this 120 million that they were going to spend for one player, and it looks like they're considering others. They're linked to Kefram Turam and Kone. At least I saw yesterday from
Mhm.
outside, not just Liverpool reporters, like French outlets. So we'll see. Because last year they signed Nunez kind of quickly and then didn't really do anything after that, sat on their hands, and, everyone was like, "No, do something with the midfield now." They just didn't. And, they're losing, Naby Keita's walking on a free, you're losing James Milner, thankfully, but Milner was actually playing, so you're losing him. And other than that, they Curtis Jones actually showed something a little bit down the stretch, but I don't really think he should be your long-term plan, or at least kind of a starting player. He may be good for depth. It looks like they're Fabio Carvalho, they might even, like, sell. It's weird he didn't get, any kind of games, and, we saw we saw the good and the bad of Elliott. I think Elliott offers a lot when he's on the ball, and he's a more kind of an attacking midfielder. I think he's been really poor defensively, and the Klopp was trying Elliott instead of Henderson, and that wasn't really working out, and then he was trying
Yeah.
Henderson, and that wasn't working out, so this has been a season that was, ups and downs, predictable in some respects. I thought it was gonna be worse than it actually was.
Mm.
But I'm somewhat hopeful we'll at least if they get, the summer right, I'll be hopeful for next season, but we'll see. Um,
Yeah, yeah, considering where they were, in the early parts of the season to finish in 5th, and they went on quite a bit of a tear at the end too, for the most part. Yeah, there's some things to build on for sure, and gotta get the summer transfer window right, which has been a theme for a lot of these teams, but it's true, and a lot of these teams too need the same thing that Liverpool need, and that's, a lot of legs and some steel in the midfield.
'Cause, I mean, especially if you get j someone just like, McAllister, the passing numbers, and he'll be able to find feet so much better, and the one thing I wanna say is I don't necessarily like a lot of teams copying Man City, like, doing, like, Trent Alexander-Arnold kind of doing what, Pep's done with Stones or Rico Lewis. I think the way to beat Man City is to not necessarily copy them. I don't think you can copy Man City. I think if they're going to play a certain way, you need to kind of counter that a little bit, in my opinion. And so, I would like to see them try to. Man City don't play with wingers; they don't play with width. I would like to see Liverpool try to focus a little bit more like that.
Mm.
If you have a steal in the middle that can recover, but also be good in possession, you can expand a little bit more out wide, and Liverpool do seem to have width everywhere. They have runners in Diaz and Gakpo, Jota, Salah. So I'd like to see them kind
Yeah.
of go a little bit more that way. Or if they're able to get Kone and this Kefram guy, they might be able to go back to a 4-3-3, which they haven't been able to do that this year because Fabinho hasn't been able to play in midfield by himself, and Henderson didn't offered absolutely nothing. So we'll see. Um,
Mm. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
and we'll move on to Brentford and Man City. Brentford do the double on Man City. Now it
I
was
was just
the
gonna say, we're gonna have to ask Thomas Frank how to beat. We just have to ask Thomas Frank how to beat City, and he'll tell us.
we've won the title lineup from City. No Kyle Walker played, but yeah, we saw Rico Lewis and Calvin Phillips. No Rodri, no Ruben Diaz. And it'll be interesting. Ruben Diaz has missed a couple games here. He missed versus Brighton as well. And
Mhm.
Man City have looked a little bit vulnerable without Ruben Diaz. And we saw Sergio Gomez tried on the wing spot. That didn't really work out. No Holland. Um, but there's enough reason to look down on that. What Brentford have been able to do, like you said, they took it they took it to City, and one thing that I saw was Brentford were really good at um, you know winning balls in the air. So anytime Brentford had like a free kick or whatnot, a lot of their best chances came from uh, Brentford, winning a ball or two in the air and keeping possession, keeping attacks alive. And, City really struggled with that. They struggled with that kind of directness. I don't know if someone like, Man United can necessarily copy that. Maybe Inter could look at that if they play, Lukaku and Dzeko, 'cause this is without Ruben Diaz as well. But I just felt City looked a little bit more without Rodri as well, but looked a little vulnerable defending balls in the air. I thought,
Mhm.
Rico Lewis, is kind of, not really gonna do much in the air for you. I thought Calvin Phillips had a poor game as well. And Brentford get the goal with I think this is fitting as well. So they get the goal with Ethan Pennick. It's a free kick. Raya floats a ball down the way. So they fake like they're going to go into a box, kind of just a direct free kick. And what they do is they get a run, and if Raya floats a ball on the wing that Shada is able to run onto, Shada then has a really good cross that finds Mbeumo. I think Mbeumo's trying to head this ball in the net himself, and he mishits it, but the mishit falls directly to Ethan Pinnock, and it's a good finish by Pinnock, and it's also fitting that Pinnock scores because we spoke last week about Ben Mee, and another part of that equation is Ethan Pinnock. Brentford's fortunes kind of changed once Ethan Pinnock got healthy again.
Mm.
And Pennick's been, one of the center backs of the season, to be honest. We spoke about highlighted Ben Mee last week, which is we can praise Ethan Pinnock this week.
Yeah, they've both been outstanding.
And so that's kind of it. I mean, what do you? This is now a few games now that Brentford have played without Tony, and they've done quite okay, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, they have. I mean, Mbeumo has really picked up the scoring slack. Well, I mean, it looks like Tony's going to stay, and they'll have him. I believe it's January 17th. But
Yeah,
that's a long way to go without him. I'm still curious to see what they're gonna do. But the other end of it is it looks like maybe Raya wants to leave, and Brentford slapped a $40 million price tag on him, which is a
good for them.
ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. But then I saw this morning that Raya's agent basically came out and said, if you're gonna demand a ridiculously high price, then we'll just stay and you'll leave for free next year. So,
Oh, the contract's
it,
going down.
yeah, so it's gonna be one of those things. Brentford, I'm sure, are gonna want to cash in on him. Especially if he wants to leave. But we'll see if they lower the price because I'm happy that they're demanding, but they might have to lower it a little bit, or else expect to lose him for free. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting battle in the summer, and it might take a back seat to. Are they going to get a striker to kind of share the load that Tony would be carrying if he was not suspended? Because
Yeah.
I don't know if Shada can do it. I think I like Shada, but he's more of like a pacey guy, completely kind of different from Tony. So I don't know. It's going to be another interesting summer for them, but they got a lot of things figured out. They don't really have to worry about defense or midfield. Hopefully, they just kind of have to figure out, what are we going to do with Raya? It looks like they already signed a possible replacement. The guy from Frankfurt, the keeper from Frankfurt.
Uh,
So, so I don't know if that's going to be Strakosha as the backup leaves, or is that Raya's replacement? So it's going to be interesting.
Wait. The guy from Frankfurt.
Fleeken, something like that.
Was he the starter for them?
Yeah, yeah, he's pretty good. So
Oh, I thought. Shit.
I think it's Frankfurt's keeper.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought I knew the keeper for Frankfurt, and he was in he was like the Europa finalist because he like had a massive save, and he's a German national. But oh well.
Let me Google.
Yeah, I think
Oh, Freiburg. My bad. Freiburg, Ben.
oh,
It's
okay.
Freiburg.
Yeah, because I thought
Yeah, I got my F Bundesliga clubs
I gotcha.
confused.
No, well they got it seems like they like the German league because I think they got shot at from Freiburg. Um,
Yeah,
and it will
or
be
yeah, something.
it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. You're right. I mean, it could be a high fee. We talked about that last week. I think the idea would be to have him kind of stay out wide because once he came on, he actually he didn't start this game. He came on in the second half and he got behind City a couple of times, and the goal really comes from him kind of getting behind on City. And I think the idea would be play Weissa as Tony's replacement. Play Weissa through the middle.
Hmm.
And Weissa, is probably doesn't have the goal scoring that Tony has, but maybe you can create
Right.
chances at least that way. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
the kind of positive I think I'd say here is I think the injury to Norgard and like the Tony suspension allows them to hold on to them for another season. And they've been missing Norgard for a lot of the stretch too.
Hmm.
So that's a sneaky. That's a really sneaky good player that I think a club like Tottenham could look at if they were shrewd.
Yeah,
They probably won't. So to keep Norgard back will be really really big. Um, and
yeah,
we'll,
he's
we'll see
crucial.
we'll see what they do with Tony. Because another thing too is it's worth their weight in gold to have someone that just doesn't miss PKs. Now I don't know how
Yeah,
many PKs they get, but someone like Mitrovic missed like four, and that could have hurt. That could have hurt Fulham down the stretch.
yeah.
So
Oh, it'll be interesting too. They do have Keen Lewis Potter that was hurt for a lot of the season. There's
mhm.
a lot of problems around that player too. Gosh, we haven't. I mean, I forgot he's
I
even on the
forgot
team.
about
We haven't
him.
seen him in such a long time. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he could be decent if he's going to be healthy. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of things to look forward to. But they still have some issues they need to solve in the transfer window, which again, like it's ever you could say that about every team.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new and unusual there.
One positive is I thought Damsgaard kind of came a little bit into his own down the
He did.
stretch. So
Yeah, yeah, he played more too.
that's good to see. And
Yeah,
with
definitely.
Man City, I know Ruben Diaz. I do think is an issue, and we'll see if he's able to play for the FA final. Um, and no Roderick cheat code. I don't think Calvin Phillips has worked out for City. The
Yeah.
games that Calvin Phillips or that Roderick hasn't really played in, that Calvin Phillips has had to play in, it hasn't necessarily worked out that great for them. And they did draw Brighton, and lost to Brentford here, and it's no Kevin De Bruyne, Grealish, Gunnigan, Holland. We're saying, but at the same time, it's you're not going into this with momentum. So we'll see if that factors in or not. They do have
Yeah.
they do got two finals to play for now, and well, first on the weekend versus Man United, a team that they beat 6-3, and then lost in the regular season. So we'll see what the rubber match has to say about that.
Yeah, that'll be another good game too. And Pep and City going for treble potentially, which is crazy.
And speaking of Man United, we'll get to Man United and Fulham. Man United do go on to win 2-1. Fulham don't want to see Man United like ever again. 'Cause in both this game and the FA game that they played in, both Fulham were leading in both games. They were leading in this game and led in that game. And at least there wasn't a red card in this game, or three red cards in this game. But Tete gets the first one with a header, and then Sancho is able to equalize it, and then Bruno has a really good run and finish. Um, the interesting, for the United news, Alex might have thrown his phone on the ground because he saw Harry Maguire get his start, maybe his last game.
Yeah.
But probably won't see him in the FA final because I think Varane was rested. And we saw Casemiro and Fred tried together. No Ericsson. Fred actually had a pretty good game. Fred maybe got the assist or one of the. He was responsible for the Bruno assist. I think he played a part in the first goal as well. And we saw Garnacho get a start, and we saw Rashford played up top. Rashford didn't necessarily have his best game, but he made a good run to help with that first goal. And it was just Sancho. Sancho kind of he got his chance to play on the white because Anthony got hurt versus Chelsea. Man United
That's right.
thumped Chelsea 4-1 on Thursdays, where this game really didn't matter, unfortunately. Where that game wasn't fun to watch as a neutral because it seemed like Chelsea could
No.
have scored 4. It seemed like United could have scored 8. Neither team were good that day at finishing. And United were really good defending. But United were getting Garnacho back at the right time. Garnacho is the reason why they beat Man City in the regular season. They also got a weird goal with like Bruno and Rashford kind of being offsides and accounting. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if Man United or Man City remember that or not. But another thing too is they beat or they lost 6-3 to Man City in the first game, and Man United scored 3 goals because Anthony Martial came on in, like, the final 10 minutes and got, like, 2 goals, 2 or 3 goals as well. I don't think he had a hat trick. Got, like, 2 goals kinda late, and they're not gonna have Martial. So it looks like it's gonna either be Rashford or Weghorst. So
Yeah.
might be a little,
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
short-staffed. Um,
Yeah,
and,
because you don't want to. If Rashford gets hurt, you don't want to have to rely on Baghorst for a long period of time. I would imagine.
Man United had 21 shots, 8 on target. They did look good. Fulham were leading. They did draw PK. They had a chance to go 2 up, and I don't wanna say Mitrovic missed the PK. That's not necessarily fair, though he has missed 4 this season, which is like I think a record. De Gea saves it, and De Gea maybe had a little confidence winning that Golden Boot. He got the picture, he got the trophy, and De Gea had a good game.
That's right.
De Gea's had
Yeah.
a weird season. We made fun of him, for that Brentford game early in the season, which feels like 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Uh, and he had a mess up versus West Ham, but overall, De Gea did have a good season for them. And whether or not they decide to move on from him or not, it's worth keeping that in mind.
Yeah. 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 I mean, he's been really, really good. But he also has made some, high profile errors as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think he's part of the heart of Man United these last couple of seasons, though. So it would be tough to get rid of him, I think. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
And, Alex probably doesn't listen to us, but, if he did, he'd probably turn this part off because we'll get to the season or if Alex would, like, give a critique, he'd be like, "Anytime you talk about United, you talk about Hurricane, and I'll do that again." Because
Ooh,
the thing is gonna turn now to what they do, in the summer. They have to find a striker. I think the talk is gonna be Harry Kane, because I think, 2024 is his last year in the contract. So you don't want him to run down and go for free. It's possible that happens. But,
yeah.
I'm curious what else you can do with the squad because I don't wanna be a hater. I feel like this is ceiling here. A lot of this turn happened because they got Casemiro, and Casemiro was maybe the player of the season. But
Yeah,
Casemiro, a year older, can he do this again next season? Eriksen will be a year older as well. There was a lot of their play that ran through Bruno, and Bruno had a bounce back year this season. But will he be able to do that next season as well? I think they had a one of the guys they brought in on loan for them, Sabitzer. Uh, he had a decent
Saboteur.
spell, but he got hurt, and I think he's only on loan, so I don't think he's necessarily the long term replacement.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of scalping or manufacturing that someone's got to work on this squad as well. And striker obviously will be a spot they look at. I saw maybe Victor Osimhen has been linked at. That would be if I was their kind of a football director. I would probably look that way.
oh,
You'd be
I also
taking
love that.
a little bit more of a risk. Well, I don't maybe not. He's taking one of his players and
Well, Napoli, yeah.
shipping him over. But Osimhen, when I saw him, the few times I did see Napoli, he just he to me he put fear in defenders' eyes. He's going to be a different player than Kane. Kane cannot do that playmaking stuff, but Osimhen just he's a tower. It seemed
Yeah,
like he'd
and
never.
he's so fast
Seems like he
too.
can just jump forever.
Mhm.
And I think I saw that today they might be linked to Rasmus Holman of Denmark, but I saw at Atalanta he only had 8 goals in Serie A. So I don't necessarily know if that would be the best idea. Maybe that would be an interesting kind of project to have in mind. But I think you need something now. You're going to be in the Champions League, and I don't necessarily know if they have a squad to really do something in the Champions League. They need to make a statement, and they need to bring in quality.
Yeah, I agree completely. Because now that they're back in the Champions League, they're gonna have to have a lot more depth. Because you're gonna have to compete against the top teams in Europe midweek, and then you got to turn around and you got to be in the running in the top four at least in the Premier League. So you got to have more depth. But I'm sure they'll invest in a lot more now that they're back in the Champions League. But yeah, man, I mean they have some young talent too. I mean Garnacho and Palestri. Palestri had a
Mhm.
cameo here.
Yep.
So they have some young players too. We'll see how they develop. There's going to be some chances for them to, start probably some of those Champions League games where they're, playing like the worst team in the group, maybe things like that. So yeah, it's going to be. This is another interesting team. We'll see what they do. We'll see if they ship out Maguire. See if they maybe get another center back. So if something happens like it did this year, where Varane and Lissandro Martinez get hurt, they have someone that is a little bit better than Maguire coming in. So
Yeah.
we'll
Mhm.
see. It's going to be interesting too, though.
And I kind of put down a name here. I don't know if they're linked to him or not, because I've always looked at. I've never really thought Dallo was the answer, and Aaron Ramasaka had a bit of a bounce back this season, a little bit, but it seemed like Ten Hag didn't necessarily favor him a ton. He probably will feature in the final, and we'll see. He did a really good job on Mitoma, so we'll see him. I guess do see what he can do versus Grealish. But
Yeah.
I'd be interested if they look at someone like Frimpong of Leverkusen,
Hey,
and then I've been
good player.
speaking of Leverkusen, I've been surprised I haven't seen anyone linked to Florian Wirtz. So I don't necessarily know if
Yeah.
he'll be moving or not, but he's only 20 and he's one of the more exciting players for that age group.
Yeah.
Um,
I wonder if Bayern might be sniffing around, but yeah, he was brilliant. I believe wasn't it last year he was like on fire. I think maybe in the Champions. I forget, but then he got hurt. So I think there was a lot of buzz about him for a little bit, and then his injury, people kind of forgot about him.
yeah,
But
well
yeah, he's a good young player.
that injury is why he missed the World Cup for Germany, and maybe that's the reason why
Mm.
people haven't kind of thought about him because he did his ACL. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Mm.
he returned, and I think he had a decent year, for Leverkusen. I know I watched there was a game that was like Monaco versus Leverkusen because I was watching, like I was like, "Oh, well, we'll see Xabi Alonso ball."
Yeah.
And Wirtz was amazing. I was just like, "This is I feel like this is what fans think Jack Grealish is or should do, and just the way that he was always direct. The way he wasn't just oh, let me just kind of get the ball on the wing and just kind of drag it uh, to the top of the box and then like find someone else. No, he was looking to create, and he was just really he was always quick with his decisions, and yeah, I'm just surprised that we haven't seen him linked to anyone. But anyways, um,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
with
But yeah, I haven't heard anything about him either.
yeah, with Fulham, I think are a tremendous achievement for them because I it was around March when they were like around 8th or 7th in the league, and they
Yeah.
didn't necessarily. That was when the FA thing happened. They lost William to a red card, Mitrovic a red card. And maybe they weren't necessarily able to bounce back, though they did do well. Carlos Vinicius got a cameo here and there and did well. Harry Wilson stepped up. Uh, this guy Solomon, who no one knew, had a purple patch in February. Scored like 5 goals in 5 games. Then he did kind of fade, but at least there was some of that. But I think I mentioned how worried about Wolves. Kind of worried about Fulham next season. Second season's always and that's
Hmm.
tricky for teams. It's gonna
It
sound
is, yeah.
it's gonna sound like I'm a Fulham hater because I think I had them relegated to start the season, which was egg on my face. But if there were,
Did
it's
you?
probably
I didn't think
Fulham
you did
or
that.
probably Wolves, and probably this one where I'm like, if maybe you sell Mitrovic or maybe he gets hurt. I don't necessarily know if William will be another older. How can he do this again at his age? 'Cause he was a
Yeah.
bright spot for them.
Yeah, at 35 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm little worried about Fulham, but we'll see.
Hmm. Well, yeah, 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 me too. But the one thing that I remember, I thought at the beginning of the season, I was like, I don't see them scoring that many goals if they don't have Mitrovic, and they ended up scoring goals without Mitrovic. So
Mhm.
that's a positive they have at least going for them. I mean, yeah, we'll see. But I love Robinson and Tim Ream. Obviously, that partnership is great. So glad to see the Americans doing well. And Marco Silva's a proper manager. He's done a really good job here.
And then we'll move on to Chelsea and Newcastle. One of the reasons why I'm not worried about us going 3 hours, Rex, is we don't really have to talk much about these 2 clubs because we've done the entire podcast has been about Chelsea and Newcastle this entire season. They do win 1-1. Um, Newcastle basically had their we got top 4 wrapped up, so we're gonna do that kinda lineup because they played Elliot
Yeah,
Anderson. Anthony Gordon got his first or one of his
first goal,
starts. He
right?
got his first goal. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's that, at least, and then, for Chelsea, uh, um, Chelsea were interesting. I think one thing that we're saying here is, they were better. Now, that's at least something. I think it's crazy that Sterling, wasn't necessarily picked to play versus Man United. He tried Mudryk, in that, Man United game on last Thursday, had a chance to have, like, 4 goals, and he seemed like I was worried about him a little bit, kind of struggling, and now I'm worried about him being a bust because he looks like the lights were too bright for him. He had a couple crazy touches and just really bad finishing where he wasn't even like able to get something on goal from close, and I didn't understand why that happened, and
yeah,
that
yeah. That's true.
that's been my biggest, when I'm trying to think of like where I was really wrong on the podcast, is I was high on Mudryk being a solid signing, and that has looked completely,
Yeah, everyone
kaput.
was.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's weird how I mean, obviously, I wanted Arsenal to get him. I didn't want Arsenal to pay that amount of money for him.
mhm.
So I thought at the time they made the right decision, but I thought he was damn near close to that much money. Yeah, I mean, whew, I don't know what's going on. Maybe in year two he'll kind of settle down a little bit, but yeah, he's looking like a bust as well, and a high paid bust at that. I mean, they shelled out a lot for him.
Another thing too is, Sterling when he's gotten his chance to play, I think he's looked good. So
Yeah,
at least in the
he's put a brace before this,
immediate
so
math, I would have Sterling as my starting guy, and then I don't know what they're gonna do with Nkunku, but Madueke or Madueke looks pretty good on the right side.
hmm,
Madueke is at
yeah.
least showing something, showing some promise. Where Mudryk, gee, that was that.
Yeah, some of the guys aren't showing anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And maybe another guy to kind of talk about to maybe be a little bit more hopeful for next season is some of Chelsea's best chances came from Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall got a couple run of games. He looked good versus Man City. He actually looked pretty good versus Man United, and he created Chelsea had like 22 shots and a number of chances in this game, and a lot of them were just Lewis Hall crosses, and his delivery was on point every single time. So
Mhm.
I don't, he's so young. Maybe the idea is it'll be Ben Chilwell. I don't know what that means for Mark Cucurella, though. Lewis Hall
Yeah.
show me
Ooh.
something a little bit here. I would have him in my future plans, to be honest.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what'll happen with Cucurella. He's another one they paid decent amount of money for and just hasn't really showed up or planned played out at all the way they thought he would.
And one another guy to talk about is Enzo Perd again. To kind of say something because 90 passing almost every game essentially. He's up there in Rodri and completing passes under pressure. I saw that kind of stat. 113 touches. He's always getting a lot of touches and two key passes. And just I would say Chelsea need to find a ball winner and play him next to him. Because
Right.
I think the midfield will look entirely different. The team will look different if you can do that. Because when Chelsea have runners that are able to look and to get the ball, Enzo will pick them out.
Yeah, can you imagine if it was Enzo and like Rice partnered together or Enzo and Caicedo partnered together? That I
Chelsea
think
fans would
that's like
definitely
the
Chelsea fans would like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's the kind of thing they need. I mean, obviously, I don't know if they can get a player like that good, but yeah, they need like a another solid, steely player to partner with Enzo to get the best out of him, which is saying something because he's played very well in a team that has a lot of players that haven't played well. So yeah, that's saying something.
I mean, I think PSG is now the top team to get Manuel Ugarte of Sporting.
Yeah,
I think Ugarte. Maybe Chelsea don't want to do any more experimenting from other leagues after this. But Ugarte was also in the Portuguese league. Maybe you could pair them together. But if you can find a way to get, like you said, a Rice or a Casado, and you have Enzo, and that's your midfield, and you can find some kind of striker for Nkuku and Sterling to kind of play with, this Chelsea team looks different next season. I was saying
yeah,
Chelsea are 5 years away from the cities and Arsenal's. If they can do that, that's not that many. Now that requires a big if, but that's only two or three players. That's two or three signings. That's not
yeah,
eight. And they have a lot of
right,
what they need to do is they have a lot of fat they can trim.
yeah,
I
a
don't see
ton.
Gallagher. Mount. It looks like his time's maybe done. Pulisic, likewise. Ruben Loftus Cheek, likewise. Uh,
Havertz maybe, right?
Havertz. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can. Yeah,
so
Felix is done. His line's done. So yeah, maybe one of the keepers too. I mean, they still got Mendy and Kepa,
yeah.
and both of them cost a ton of money. So they're making a lot in wages too. So yeah, we'll see.
And financial fair play doesn't exist for these big clubs. You can just be like, oh, income. There's probably a way for Chelsea to put together some bids to bring some people in. And I
Oh,
think
definitely.
they have. If Lukaku wins the Champions League final, Inter will probably want him. So you can probably sell. He's still a Chelsea player. You can sell Lukaku to get some kind of bid. So we'll see what Chelsea decide to do. But
Yeah, interesting for sure.
it is kind of crazy. I was again. I was talking them down last week. If they can get those two or three signings right, this Chelsea team does look different. I've always favored Pochettino. For some reason, I think I just respected what he was able to do because everyone was always growing up and listening to European UK radio. They would always talk down Spurs. They'd be like, "Oh, Spurs never won anything," and then you watch them get to a Champions League final, and you're like, why do you keep talking down this guy?" And the only reason why that squad ended up kind of falling apart is it was similar to what Klopp kind of did. Is there's so many guys that ended up running their socks off, and you weren't able to replace the squad. You weren't able to refresh once the players kind of got older a little bit, and you lost players like Modric, and you weren't able to necessarily replace them. And I think it was more a case of just the owners not necessarily caring. And it seems at Chelsea,
Mm.
Pochettino will have an owner that will try to do that.
Yeah,
So
they'll back you.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, they're willing to shell out a ton.
and with Newcastle, they getting into Champions League opens a whole new set of doors, and it's not really fair. Another thing too is every single season it seemed Newcastle would be one of the like 12 or 14 clubs that you'd be like, no, I wouldn't say that, maybe 13 clubs where you'd be like 13 clubs that you have to you think about in the mix for relegation. And that's one of those teams that's basically out the door now. So it's making it
Yeah,
harder for these other teams to think about as well. Not just harder for top four, harder for relegation, because they have owners that seem not just able to spin well. able to pick out who they like, and when they bring him Anthony Gordon aside, maybe it's kind of a bust. Uh,
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
and we'll see what they decide to do in the summer. I can't imagine
Yeah.
they're not going to be vocal and try to look for things as well. Um,
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Yeah, but just to touch on how well they did spend, I mean, they might do this again, but they went down to a relegated side in Burnley and got Pope for cheap. So, yeah,
100,
they could do
yeah,
something like that
excellent.
again too. So it's not just like the Chelsea thing where they're throwing loads of cash at people. They're actually like fitting pieces into like a puzzle, you know. They're going out and saying, "Oh, we're going to target this guy because he works well in our setup," and then they go and get him. They're not just throwing money at all these good players and just seeing what kind of works and what doesn't.
I mean, I made the joke, and I feel like this probably is going to happen. Not even joking. I'll be serious. I think they'll probably will get the favorites to go get Kyle Walker Peters.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
Trippier, they relied on him. He played every single minute for them this season. I don't how he's getting older. I don't necessarily know
he
if you can
is.
rely on that. And here's someone that could be, I don't want to say a ready-made replacement, but someone that could at least do a job and take some minutes off him, and then maybe eventually kind of replace him and be a long-term kind of option. Because I think he's only
Yeah,
25, 26, and for being at Southampton, to me, he's got quality. In these games, I mean, he shows up. He showed up for Man City, in the past, and yeah, I think someone should probably look at him as well.
yeah, he'd be a good buy, I think.
And then we're into with Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace. This one ends 1-1. Awani actually finishes with another goal, and this guy got hot towards the end of the year, and good
The
for him. Good, because he one of the first strikers brought in, and I don't think he finished with double digits in goals, and Gibbs White with another assist. So good to see as well. And then with Crystal Palace, Will Hughes gets the goal, but Elise gets the assist, and Elise finishes with 11 assists. And towards the end, Hodgson came in. I don't really know what Theo was doing, but Elise and Eze really did start to click, and that's important because speaking of players that maybe won't be back next year, I think Zaha is on the last year of his contract, and he hasn't necessarily said what he wants to do. And Zaha, I still think is maybe he's 30 or like 28 or 29. Zaha
yeah.
still seems to be he's got game. I don't know if a team is going to look at it like an Everton's going to not necessarily that kind of club, but I don't know if Palace might even be in a better spot than Everton. Uh,
Yeah.
but at least maybe the fact is they are in London. So he's living in London. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with Zaha, because if Zaha leaves, I would be a little worried. That is kind of a pretty important creative player for them, and it seems
Yeah, most definitely.
Zaha's a pretty good influence for Eze and Olise, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It seems like every summer Zaha's linked
True.
away, and
Yeah.
he ends up staying. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's not going to stay at Palace forever, so we'll see what happens. But he's important. I think the way things start to finish for Palace will lead him to want to stay, I think. So we'll see. Yeah, once they fired Vieira and they start to have that uptick in form, that might be enough to persuade him. That the Crystal Palace project is going in the right direction, and he'll stay. But we'll see. Every summer, it seems like he's linked with a new place. So we'll see what happens. It's another fun part about the summer transfer window.
Well, it's not just players and not just Zaha. It could be managers as well. Because I mean, what do you do
Yeah,
with Roy Hodgson? 70-ish years old, but he's come
yeah,
down and he won what? He took points in like I don't know, 9 of his 11 games. They
yeah.
they
It's
didn't they
crazy.
didn't lose a lot towards the end,
Mhm.
and so I don't know what you do necessarily with him, because one thing that's worth saying is, I thought the reason why I was kind of against him coming in is I remembered when he was playing, he had been Take, and it was Palace would basically do what Nottingham Forest did. They'd have 35% of the ball, less than 200 passes, and it would be maybe you'd get a couple chances here and there. They Palace have been playing a little bit since Hodson's been there. It seems like he's enjoyed having a little bit more attacking flair. It hasn't, he only had Zaha back then. Now he's got some guys to kind of play with, and Eze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they got some fun players. Elise as a I mean, Zaha if they keep him. So yeah, they're a fun team. I don't know what went wrong with Vieira. I mean, maybe losing Gallagher. But yeah, they seem to recover nicely once they got rid of Vieira. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Hodgson's the guy going forward either. It's going to be, is it kind of like, oh, it's going to be this like mid to lower table Crystal Palace again with Hodgson like we're used to, or do they have the players now that they can actually, kind of give it to some teams attacking wise? So I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where you kind of know what you have now. Yeah, it's almost like you don't think they would go down if they actually did give, Roy the job. But do you want to get into a funk where, that is the ambition, just kinda staying up? That maybe isn't something that Zaha wants to hear. But I yeah,
Yeah,
I don't necessarily know. I mean, we got the, Europa final, today, I think, and, it's 2
what's
final
today?
specialists.
Nice.
It's, Jose Mourinho versus, Europa's Real Madrid in, Sevilla, and, Jeremy said Spanish teams never lose finals, so I think we know where he's gonna go. Also, he doesn't like Mourinho.
Yeah,
But, that could be it could be an absolute dross of a game, but, or not. So we'll kind of see with that. It'd be
Oof.
cool to see Pablo, Dybala, kind of win a trophy. I've always kind of wanted him to kind of be a little bit something, and it seemed, when Ronaldo kind of went to Juventus, it seemed like Dybala kind of, got the, shoulder, the cold shoulder, and then
That's true. Yeah,
it always seemed like Dybala kinda played in the position that Messi played, and Dybala was never able to play in Argentina's Messi, or in
right.
Argentina when Messi was also playing, so, I've always felt like this guy deserves a little bit something, so it'd be nice, in my opinion, to kind of see that. Also, Gini Ronaldo kind of lifting a trophy
Yeah,
would be kinda cool. Mane lifted a trophy with
Ronaldo.
Bayern even though he didn't play, in in the game. It'd be cool to see
Yeah,
Ronaldo, will win a lift a trophy, so
yeah,
that'll be what I'll be looking
yeah,
forward to, and we got
yeah. That'd
the
be awesome.
FA final to maybe talk about next week. Maybe do a Champions League preview, so we don't necessarily go too long, and then that's kind of it. That's been the EPL season. I mean, Rex, you got any final thoughts for what you thought?
It's been another crazy year, but we always go into the year knowing that it will be crazy. A lot of twists, a lot of turns. Good action at the bottom of the table. Pretty good action at the top of the table. I know it wasn't, like when City beat United like on the last day, that kind of drama.
Or
But
last
it
year?
certainly was a drama at the bottom end.
Last
Or
year,
last year, yes.
last year was
But
good.
it was a
Well,
great season. I mean, I there's gonna be it's gonna be a lot of money spent, I think, this summer again. So yeah, some of these teams have got to keep up with spending if they want to stay in the mix for Champions League or even just Europa League is now hotly contested to get into that competition.
yeah,
So yeah, it was a great season and looking forward to another really good season.
if you got Aston Villa able
We'll
to,
couple months and we'll
I
be
mean,
back.
Aston Villa took Babacar Kamara off. I think when that happened, Marseille was actually in the Champions League, so they took a Champions League player, and they're trying to do the same with Asensio. That is
Mhm.
showing you that at least Aston Villa is taking this seriously. So we'll see what the other teams try to do as well. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's been fun and maybe not necessarily fun talking about Liverpool. I did a lot of rants almost like every single week. Sorry about to put you through that, Rex. And we will be back. We'll be back to talk about next week with the FA final. We'll see if Alex is happy or not, and then we'll see. We'll do a little Champions League preview, and then that'll gotta be. And maybe we'll do a kind of a roundup of the Champions League, and then that'll guess be it for the little podcast. Maybe we'll take a break for the summer, so we'll kind of see. But anyways,
yeah,
for us who at the reserve squad, thank you for listening, and thank you for being with us through the season, this crazy season. And for us who at the reserve squad, you stay squatty.
stay squatty. Thanks for listening and watching.
Right, and stop recording.